It's on, isn't it?
Now it is.
It says it is. Laser. Oh, there it goes. We're all set. Thank you, sir. Good evening. Excuse me. Welcome to the regular meeting, Monday, October 23rd, 2023. I'll call the meeting to order at 6:30. Roll call, please, Ms. Clerk.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Claudia Abrona.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Elizabeth Abrona.
Here.
Mayor Infante.
Here.
Thank you.
Mr. Oakes, if you would lead us in the pledge, please.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so the first thing we have on here is a presentation on the marketing services update. I believe that's you, Mr. Sugarfree, but I'll leave it up to the city manager.
So, yeah, we have our monthly update regarding the marketing efforts, and they've each put together a brief PowerPoint presentation. So I'd like to call John up to the podium, and he can take it away.
Good evening. Nice to see you all. Here to give you just a brief update. If you could go to our PowerPoint, please. Where'd it go? Okay, next slide, please.
Oh, Randy's got it.
So I'll take you through the website efforts first, and then I'll talk a little bit about the ad campaign that we're underway with. And also you'll hear a little bit about our social media from Claudia. And also Rick is attending the meeting too if you have any questions for him relative to the website. Our biggest effort has been to continuing to match up the visuals with dining, stay events, the bakeries, the wineries, pretty much all the categories that serve the city. We continue to update the information from the old site as we move the old site material over to the new site. This updates really hadn't occurred for over close to 4 to 5 years, so we're taking out old businesses that had gone out of business, replacing new businesses that had come in that hadn't been on the old site, and replacing those business listings with new information, in some cases new visuals, new copy. We've added new business and hotels not listed on the old site completely, and then removed the hotels that were not that were on the website but not paying TOT to Solvang. We removed out-of-date events and replaced it with new events. So as you recall, some of the blogs were 4 and 5 years old, so we got rid of those, and we moved it on to a new one. Also, as you know, the website was down for about 5 days, the old website. That was nothing to do with us. It was a situation where one of the old agencies had the passwords, and we weren't able to get that from them. So glad to say within those 5-day period, we went live with the new site, and so only missed 5 days. Because it's really important from Google's perspective. If you're off at all, your ratings go down quite a bit. So we recovered from that. We created new images and postings for the Solvang Haunted House event, created new listings for Yule Fest. We've been working with everybody on that. The parade, the tree lighting. We also have a film crew coming in to cover the parade and the tree lighting when that comes about. So we'll have new creative for that, new visuals, new photography, and new video as well. And we created new detail for key events as well. We worked with staff to update the tasting room listings in Solvang with Solvang only, placed new blogs on the new site, replaced the old ones, shot new videos for Danish Days. We produced a video for that encompassing all the great things that happened in Danish Days. And that'll be used for the website, ads, and PR. And then again, as we approach Danish Days next year, we'll have good quality video to promote that event. And we continued with new tracking and SEO enhancements throughout the site. We continue to improve navigation for dining, events, lodging, business, and wine tasting rooms. We continue to work on the mobile experience, produce street banners, artwork. This is kind of away from the website. Your marketing person for Yule Fest, Cheryl, needed a banner artwork, so we produced that for her. And also we produced a full-page ad for Visit San Ynez Guide. We've been working with the Bay Area News Group. I shared this with the council in our last get-together. We talked about that we're formulating a marketing campaign with them. This includes banner ads for digital campaigns, social media ads, links to Facebook and Instagram, print ad with the San Jose Mercury News, which has been negotiated as value added, so there's no charge for that, and links and tracking pixels to the lodging specials page, as that's going to be the major call to action. Will be getting people to stay in our hotels and increasing TOT and putting in that money to the general fund. And we've also created creative to support Yule Fest as well. So we're in the process of doing artwork and various other things that have been requested. I'm going to let Claudia take over from here. She'll give you a little update on the e-blast that we just did. As you can see, we continue to have an amazing open rate for those. Is Claudia on?
She is, yeah, she should be on there.
Of the mid 40s.
Okay, Claudia,
And-
we're just now hearing you, so I don't know if you've been talking prior to that.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so as John mentioned, we have had very high email open rates. So September, we saw 47% open rate on our newsletter. In October, we saw 45%. As you can see, we had over 500 clicks on the email newsletter. We've also been continuing to create new local hood stories. Our bakery's local hood story has hit over 25,000 views. And we are also working on a restaurant series of local hood stories. We just finished a breakfast local hood story, and next we're going to be working on brunch places to eat in Solvang. We also worked on a Halloween Happenings email newsletter that went out last week that had 45% open rate and informed people of booking their hotels for Yule Fest, visiting the pumpkin patch, haunted house, and other fall events. And then we also converted that into a meta ad, which will run through the end of the month and will point people back to the Solvang website, to the lodging specials page and the event page. And that's it for me, unless anybody has any questions.
Okay, as I said, we're going to be brief. We have continued, as I said, to update the website. As we move forward, we still have budget to do web maintenance, and we will be doing any other additions that we need to make, any corrections, any updates. We'll be doing those through that budget. We've pretty much exhausted the $22,000 budget that we had for the design. And as we move forward, like I said, we'll continue to do the updates, and we're now moving on to our marketing campaign, which will start in about 2 weeks. We wanted to hold up the marketing until we got the website fully functioning and up. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, anyone?
I do have a question. We have a lot of events coming up. What is the best way for organizers and venues to put up their event on the Solvang USA
So
website?
they would need to get a hold of Candace, and then she will get that event, and then she'll give that information to us, and we'll get it on the website.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Appears not.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we have Anna here to talk a little bit about what she's done in the Danish days. Kind of wrap up.
And I don't need to present necessarily. I'm really just here for questions. I had 2 separate presentations that were in this report. One was just the generic September for the city, and then I actually have Thomas Borkom also here with me, representing Danish Days. So that was a totally separate report just for Danish Days. And again, you've all had that in the agenda packet, but I'm happy to answer anything. And that's just marketing, so they haven't turned in anything else as far as financials and things like that yet for that event.
Do we know if the attendance was greater than the previous?
Yes. Well,
those
I mean,
numbers?
Did
so
you on there?
the problem with Danish Days, it's not a problem, but because it's not a closed event, right? We don't have an exit and entrance. We don't have any way to control the crowd flow. The only things that and hold on, I'll open up my PowerPoint. The only things that we can track really are our online ticket sales. So that's why I've been working with them since 2015 to help with the event. In 2015, that year, the old SCBB still was doing the ticket sales, which it wasn't very robust, didn't really help me much. So in 2016, we moved away from that, and that's when I started with Eventbrite, which is what I've been using all this time. And that keeps increasing and increasing and increasing. And we're just trying to really push people to the ticket sales, because then not only do we have a better idea as to how many people, where they're coming from, but it's all that data. We're collecting all that data, which in the past, everything is just anecdotal. It's just hearsay by talking to people. So yes, so this year we had, let me see if I can pull this up. We had the highest gross dollar amount of ticket sales, online ticket sales in advance that we've ever had for Danish Days. Something that we saw this year, which was really spectacular, were the Dane for a Day packages, which are just a ticket bundle, really. Those, we raised the price on those last year. So 2 years now, they're going for $100 a pop. And those ticket prices, or those tickets this year, I can't get it open.
And I can help you out because I found the data. You provided it in your report, but I noticed it because it was good.
Yeah.
Right?
So,
It was,
thank you.
in 2022, we had the same $100 per package, and we got 30. We sold 31 VIP seats. In 2019, we sold 72, but they were $65. So you blew it away, or we all did, at 64 for this year. 64 VIP sold at $100 at the near double price. So it was a good success story.
And then, so I put that note there just so everybody understands they are meant for two people. And usually when people buy these, because it's got tickets for activities that go over the course of a day and a night or a night and a day, it usually means they're staying in the area. So those people are committed. I mean, we have very few people who don't show up to redeem their packages, to pick them up. We do have a lot of people that don't show up with just the breakfast tickets, but that's money that we now have. It's, it's a non-refundable event. So there's that. And you can see all of the history there of all the online ticket sales from 2016 on. And obviously we paused for a couple of years with the event. So yes, and then coupled with what Sue had as her visitor center count for that weekend for this year, which was in the other report, the city report, she also saw an increase in visitors coming into the center for Danish Days weekend. So signs point to yes, long story short.
Any other comments or questions?
No questions, just a comment. Tom and his committee did a great job. Thank you. Do you have anything you want to add? It was great.
I'd like to say thank you to you, too, for your support.
It was very,
For the event.
a lot of work you guys did well.
It was an awesome year this year.
Looking forward to keeping it going.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you very much.
We also have Leanna here, if you have any questions about her slides that she provided. Or if, Leanna, you want to highlight anything in particular?
Sure. I will go to slide 3, if you want to pull that up. We did the VIP Solvang experience giveaway. We had a girl named Tom, the band, reach out to Anna and us about offering a giveaway, and we felt like in order for this to be the most well-rounded tourism opportunity to do on our Instagram page, we also included Peasants Feast and the Vinland Hotel to give away a grand prize. And then we'll skip ahead a couple slides to bore you with the details. But basically, doing that giveaway allowed us to increase our number. So in September, we gained over 1,000 net followers, and that the comparison was 700 in August and 390 in July. So we did see a nice little boost from doing that giveaway and encouraging people to visit.
And then skipping back to slide 5, we know that it's been really important to highlight events that are going on in the city. So we did release an event calendar graphic that we pinned up to the top of the Instagram profile, and that got over 145 shares and 86 saves, and it reached over 10,400 people. We continue to have the highest engagement rate out of all of the other local DMOs, and we are the second highest in new followers, just under Visit Santa Barbara, with a very low ad spend in comparison to them. Any questions?
Questions, anyone? No. No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it, John. Okay, so now, this is a time for public communications for non-agenda and consent items. Would you introduce that to us, please, Madam Clerk?
At this time, you may address the council on items not on the agenda and on consent. Time limit is 3 minutes. We will start with in-person comments first.
I have a request from Keith Adler.
This is on consent items, but obviously the consent items are on the agenda. I don't know if that makes a difference.
It's on the consent items. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm Keith Adler, resident of Solvang, and full disclosure, also a member of the Planning Commission, if that makes a difference. I'd like to argue for the removal of item 6B from tonight's agenda. How item 6B got as far as tonight's agenda, I don't know, but I'm speaking tonight with the hope that you, the City Council, will vote to remove it. Why, after 3.5 years, this issue should even be showing its face now, it's kind of beyond me. Don't you all have more important issues to resolve? Is anyone banging on your doors threatening a mask or vaccine mandate? Solvang had weeks and weeks of bad press.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to stop you for a second.
Okay.
That's not on the consent agenda.
Well, the consent agenda is the agenda for tonight's meeting, approving the agenda.
No. If you look at the agenda, the consent agenda is a number of items that we will accept or as a group without questions.
Okay.
What you're talking about is agenda item 6.
6B.
Right. All the consent items are in agenda 4.
Okay, then I will
Come back.
I will
back
come
on
back
6.
You've already got my slip.
I have your slip. We'll modify the thing. Thank you very much, Keith. Do you have anybody else that wants to speak on a non-agenda item or consent item? Do you have anybody online that would like to speak? I'm sorry, do we have a hand? I apologize, I didn't see it. Yes, sir. Please come up, identify yourself.
Very simply, I was going to mention what you just said is not a consent item, but my name is Jim Stewart. I am a member of, a resident of Solvang. You may recall that several weeks ago I came and testified before the council seeking you to pass a resolution with regard to homeless and camping in the city. I advocated for that, and you did pass it, and very rarely is it that any citizen of Solvang ever comes back to say thank you, but I am here to say thank you to the council for acting on that. I think it is a very important step forward for us in addressing that issue, and I thank you.
Thank you very much for the comments. We appreciate it. Anybody else in the room or on Zoom? I don't see any hands. Okay. So at this time, no more public communications. City manager's report.
I have a couple of things. I wanted to announce I received a letter from the Government Finance Officers Association, a news release last week, commending us for another year getting the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. So kudos to our finance staff. This is for the fiscal year that ended in '22, I believe. Yeah, so last fiscal year, are in the process of going over the audit, or in the process of being audited for the last fiscal year that just ended in June. I expect we'll get another one of these commendations. If you've been in our office, we have a plaque on the wall, and we get a little button every year. We're adding to that, so I wanted to give a shout out to the finance team for that accomplishment. I also wanted to announce and remind, it's been on our Facebook page, and will be on there, but a reminder to the community, Saturday, November 18 at Lot 4 is another City of Solvang community cleanup. It's an opportunity to get rid of household trash, scrap metal, green waste, wood, and bulky waste, not hazardous waste. So that's a separate process. If you have any questions, let us know. And those are the two things I had to talk about tonight.
Comments or questions of the city manager's report?
Nope.
Okay.
Thanks, Randy.
No.
No.
Date, Mr. City Manager?
November 18, from
That'll-
8 a.m. to noon.
That'll be out in Lot 4, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's where they do it every time. It's a good process. I like that. Okay, so item number 3 is council comments and requests. Do we have any council comments? Yes, ma'am.
I do have a request to staff. There are several commercial buildings for sale in Solvang. Some of them are out in the commercial area. Some of them are in the TRC area. I have certain concerns that as new landlords take over these buildings, there won't be an understanding on their historical and architectural value. So I would like the council to consider a historical landmark ordinance so that we can make a plan to preserve the historical value of these buildings as, new owners are getting a hold of the buildings.
Would that differ from our design review committee?
I understand that we obviously have the design and review committee, but I wonder if there is more that the city can do to preserve it. Maybe recognizing historical landmarks is part of a program to, the city to collaborate with landlords to preserve or renovate their buildings. Many of them need, sometimes they need retrofitting, or sometimes they need very expensive renovations that, an average landlord might not be able to take on, or maybe the city would like to work with them. So this is something that I think I would like to discuss if it is relevant other than the BAR, because members of the DRC, formerly the BAR, they change. It's no guarantee that the institutional knowledge is going to stay there. So I think that we could do more work other than having a panel of 5 people that might change year to year, review these projects.
Council members, would you like to hear that as a council agenda item to discuss?
Sure.
I think you asked the right question, which is to make sure we understand the difference and what it would between what the DRC does, because we are a design-driven city, clearly, and we do clearly have some unique structures, like the windmills in particular, that probably don't have any functional use from a landlord's or even a business perspective, but preserving them is really critical.
Yeah, and I'm going to give you a very good example. There is a particular building on Copenhagen Drive. It features an arcade, but it also features the thatch-looking roof building. And this is one building that was built in this was our original general store, and it blends both Spanish and Danish architectural design. It kind of marks where the city began to look the way that it does today, and that's not necessarily relevant to the DRC, but it's relevant to somebody that knows about local history. So I think it's worth considering the historical value, not only the aesthetic, which is ultimately what the DRC adjudicates, aesthetics, not just historical value.
Who would administer?
I don't know, that's why we need to have a discussion.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we should, I think it's worth investigating.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Mr. City Clerk, City Manager, if you would put that on a future agenda, please, so we can discuss that. Anybody else have a comment? I have a couple, if I may. First, those of you in the audience have probably noticed that we have been running back and forth, a couple of the folks up front of the room have been going back and forth with the IAT. We had a terrible incident at the last city council meeting. We actually had to kill 8 different people that had logged on to Zoom.
Could you,
Well,
not,
just
oh my God.
removed them from the session.
My apology. It's the Italian in me. I can't help it.
Well, they needed killing.
He's a mean mayor.
Okay, now we're paying
Okay, so
attention.
now that I've stepped on my tongue again, we had to stop a couple of people from logging in and saying obscene things and showing images that weren't appropriate. We are going to discuss that. It's an item, and I'd like to move that forward into the agenda so everybody here has a chance to talk about it. It is currently on agenda item, is it 7? Where's my agenda? 8? 6D. I'd like to move that up, please. Let's make that 6A if we might, or in front of 6A, so that everybody here understands, because one of the decisions is, do we continue with Zoom? And I know a number of the people in here use it. So this is a discussion that we need to have. I've been watching the gentleman over here who maintains all of the structure for us and looking at the screen, and I have not seen any issues tonight, correct? Okay. It was very, very bad last week, last meeting. And this is not isolated to us. It's been happening all over. So we need to have a discussion on that. So if we can move that up before 6A, we'll talk about that briefly, make some kinds of decisions and go from there. But I would like to hear what everybody in the audience has to say about that. Second, one of the things you had talked about new owners coming in, there is a community forum on housing rights. This is going to be held November 2nd, right here in the City Council building, starting at 6 p.m. on that Thursday. This talks about the new changes in the state law, the rights and responsibilities regarding rent, repair, and maintenance, eviction issues and security deposits, financial resources available, and the opportunity to ask all the questions, because we as the council have been receiving a lot of comments about new landlords taking over buildings and what their rights are. So there's going to be a meeting. 3rd District County Supervisor Joan Hartman will be there. Our Mayor Pro Tem Elizabeth Arona will be there, and Buellton Council Member David Silva will be there. So there is going to be food, child engagement, and Spanish interpretation so that everybody can come in here and learn what their rights and responsibilities are as an owner or a renter in an apartment. Residential use, correct. It's not commercial. Yes, thank you. Okay, nothing else? Then let's go to the consent items. This is item number 4 on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, do we need to vote on moving that 6D to 6A?
Well, since item 4A is approve the order of the agenda, the proposal by the mayor is to move 6D up to 6A or proceeding 6A. So that would be part of the consent agenda approval.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you. I forgot about that as well. So the consent agenda. Does anybody want to pull anything off the consent agenda?
No.
No.
All right. May I have a motion to accept the consent agenda with the change to A, which is to move the agenda so that we have the Zoom issue coming up before 6A.
I think you just made it.
Well, second it.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Clark,
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Now, let's go to the number 6, the discussion items. And let's start off with, for the amendment to the agenda, that we will start off with the issue on the Zoom. I think that was 6D. If you would introduce that to us, Madam Clerk.
Discussion and possible direction to staff regarding the termination of remote public comment via Zoom during city meetings.
Mr. Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Fortunately, at the October 9th meeting, no one was actually killed, but there were a number of people who were figuratively removed from the Zoom call because the city council meeting was, there was a concerted effort to try and disrupt the city council meeting with speakers who intended and apparently did get through a couple of them with anti-Semitic, racist, and other inflammatory statements. This is not something limited to Solvang, as the mayor mentioned. This is something known as Zoom bombing. It has been happening all over California and across the nation. And a number of public agencies have been addressing this in various ways. Zoom came about largely in most agencies because of the pandemic. It gave members of the public an opportunity to attend remotely, also to have council members attend remotely when there was a need for social distancing. Since that time, though, because of the Zoom bombing, a number of agencies have been removing the Zoom option. They still do have public access cable presentation for their city council meetings. They also have online one-way communication such as YouTube, Vimeo, what have you, or through their own websites. So there's no legal requirement for the city council to conduct its meetings by Zoom or to have that remote option available. But because it does have that option available, there's a question of how communications should be limited, if at all, and whether or not the council wants to impose some regulations. There's obviously some First Amendment issues involved as well from prior restraint if we're going to be stopping people from speaking or having regulations about how they speak. The comments that did make it through on the Zoom last time were pretty inflammatory. They're pretty awful. I did get a chance to listen to a couple of them. So the question before the council is whether or not the council wishes to continue having the Zoom option at all. The city council still does have online availability through local cable access, so people can watch the meetings. They can still call in, and we can set up a method to do that. That doesn't eliminate the problem that we had before. But the question before the council is how you would like to structure the ability for the public to participate. As I mentioned, and as there are attachments to the staff report, there are a number of agencies that have just cut it off completely. They're not interested in doing that anymore, and if people want to communicate with the city councils in those cities, they have to come actually to the council chambers for that purpose. So that is an option for the city council to do that. But this is an opportunity for the council to discuss how it would like to continue having public comment presented to the city council, and with that, I'm available to answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you very much. Questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah. Are there any other vendors besides Zoom that has a better security feature or platform?
The short answer is I'm not sure. There's Microsoft Teams. There are other online capabilities. Zoom is just the most common, I think, because it is very easy to use. It's almost ubiquitous at this point. People are used to signing on to Zoom meetings. Microsoft Teams has the same issues, though. It's not so much the security of getting people in as what they say once they're in. And because of the anonymity of the internet, people seem to be willing to say more than they would be willing to say if they had to come and say it in public, in person at the city council meeting. So I don't know that a different platform is necessarily going to weed out that kind of commenter. If they have the ability to comment from anywhere in the world, it doesn't matter what security procedures you have. Zoom has those. We can admit people individually, but they may still say that remotely, even if they're admitted and an authorized commenter. That's the First Amendment. The question is whether or not you want to be able to open that to anyone in the world. It allows the kind of situation that we had at the last meeting. We don't know where those people were physically. They could have been anywhere in the world, and they are concerted efforts to do this because there were 8 or 9 of them with different surnames and screen names that we just have to guess at whether or not it's a legitimate comment or not. And once it starts, as it has in some other cities, it's hard to shout it down. It's hard to stop it. You can cut it off, but the damage is done. Those statements have been made. And again, that is the First Amendment. People can try to make those statements, but the question is, how much of a platform does the City Council want to offer? Is it a worldwide platform where anyone from the world can comment, or do you prefer that people will come and comment in person at the City Council meetings?
I have a question. How will consultants and other featured speakers who we do want to present and participate only digitally, how will they two-way communicate with us going forward?
So that is one of the questions that the council can answer. If you want to limit Zoom option to those with whom the city is currently doing business rather than the public comment section, we can continue having that Zoom option. And that's not something that the public would be able to comment on via remote means. It's just something that the city would be doing, same as we did in the old days when someone could not make it, they would just telephone in, and they would do it that way. So that's an option.
Just to be logistically or procedurally clear, we'll still have live streaming of these sessions, so the public can still participate, but they cannot communicate. In order to make public comment, they need to either email or be here in person. Is that right?
Well, that is one of the options, certainly. The council can continue with Zoom. I'm not suggesting that we're terminating it. I'm opening it up to discussion from the council as to how you'd like to do it.
I'm heading that way. Can we actually provide a Zoom link? But if you plan to participate in the Zoom link, require that you notify or request the secure ID because you intend to make a comment. And that way we know who is participating, and we have a little more governance over who actually has access to the two-way communication.
We could do that, but I would posit that would not have stopped last week. So if Henry Himmler, for example, one of the screen names that we had last week, said, "I'd like a secure link." How do we vet that person? How do we make sure that that is a legitimate comment? And how do we make sure that that's not something that is what we're trying to address at this point? So I don't have a good answer for you on that. And there is the concern, obviously, that if Henry Himmler wants to spout off anti-Semitic comments to the City Council, we don't know in advance what those comments are going to be.
At that point, don't we have their IP address? We should be able to know who that individual is with that secure link.
We would
ID.
have a virtual private network where they could do it from anywhere in the world and provide you that number. It's unfortunate that that's the way the world works with the internet at this point. They could be commenting from Belarus, and we would only have a local IP address for that purpose.
I think one of the things that I think I heard you say is we don't have Zoom when we look onto the agenda right now, there's a Zoom link. So we don't put the Zoom link in the agenda. If we have a consultant that needs to present to us, we can have Zoom on. And for those people who are known to us that we have provided a link to, we can still get their presentations. But nobody else can even apply for it, actually. It's on us to go to them.
That is an option for the council to consider. The public would still have the ability to observe the meeting, either through the live link on the city's website or actually participating in person. They just would not have the ability to comment remotely.
It'll still be on Comcast. It's
Correct.
broadcast on Comcast on Channel 23.
And we also broadcast live. I think it's on Vimeo, and Laser can probably correct me if I'm wrong on that, but there is another internet-based solution where it's a one-way communication where they're able to observe but not comment.
Well, here's another question. Obviously, I saw all of the people that were signing up to say horrible things, and we don't want to give them a platform to. But how often does this come up? I just gauging from, obviously, I love seeing a room full of people here, but also Zoom has allowed a lot of people to participate or make comment remotely that normally wouldn't be here. It's one easy way to make it easier for people to participate in decisions taken by their local government. So I'm just wondering, how often does it come up? Is it worth it to do this to prevent potential hateful speech in our platform versus having one less way that people can participate in their meetings?
Yeah, and that is the policy direction for the council to make. How much would you like to run that risk? How often has it happened? In the last month, probably at least a dozen agencies have gotten Zoom bombed. During the pandemic, it was much higher than that, and it wasn't just racist or anti-Semitic stuff. It was actual people, if I can be blunt, would put parts of their body on the camera when they were speaking that probably was not appropriate for public comment. So it's one of those things that when I went to law school, I never thought I'd have to address, but it does raise some interesting issues of how the First Amendment gets interpreted and how it gets applied. Yes, Zoom does provide an additional opportunity for public participation, but with that additional opportunity, you have to consider that maybe there are people who will speak who are not speaking on issues that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. And if that's the case, how do you close that avenue down? Do you close it down when it happens? Do you close it down in advance? Or do you come up with some hybrid approach to it?
Mr. City Manager.
To answer Councilwoman Arona's question, it happens a lot. It was actually a topic at the recent League of Cities meeting in Sacramento. They devoted one of the sessions to it. So it's happening frequently. It's only happened to us, thankfully, the one time. But it's happening at school boards. It's happening at various other forums quite a bit. To answer Councilman Brown's question, I am aware we used Teams in my last life, I'll call it. It has an ability to differentiate or to allow the ones that you want on the call to be able to participate in the conversation, one level of access, and then everybody else has another level of access, and they don't have an ability to comment or participate in the ongoing meeting. So, I mean, there is a way to do that. We did have some issue, that was Microsoft Teams, and we did have some issues with folks who aren't quite as technologically savvy. It did have some access issues, but I think they eventually worked through it all. But that is another option. What we've done tonight is Laser over there has basically disallowed anybody from unmuting themselves, from sharing screens and doing any other stuff. So there is that level, but it has to be done every meeting. It's not a default setting. And if for some reason Laser's not here or we get kind of complacent and forget, it could happen again.
Aren't there levels of Zoom, versions of Zoom that are layers of increasing control? So, for example, you could open up the call for comments, but suppress them for most of your discussion time frame. These are, giving access or admitting people to the Zoom session, things like that. If we can, is that something we should explore too?
That's a possibility. There's the Zoom webinar where it's
Yeah.
entirely just one-way communications where people don't have the opportunity to raise their hand or comment, where they're just listening. That's kind of what we do with Vimeo already. That is a possibility that we could do. The difficulty comes in kind of the gatekeeping, where you draw the line of allowing people to comment. Because if you open that door and people walk through it, then you have to deal with it if something does happen, like happened at the last meeting. I provided the mayor a script in the event someone did unmute themselves, where you mentioned this is not something that's within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council, and you talk and you try to shut them down at that point. But then you end up in an argument, and those comments do get made. So the question is whether or not you want to provide that opportunity in the first place for that to happen. And I am a strong proponent of additional opportunities for members of the public to participate in their democracy. But with that opportunity also comes some detriment and some responsibility, quite frankly. So the policy call for the City Council to make is, how do you want the members of your constituency to communicate with you? And how would you like to place restrictions on that? And that's a difficult balance.
Well, I would just concur and make a comment for my peers here that the public participation is really vital for our community. I think we enjoy a small town where the public comes out, which is fantastic. I'm reticent to minimize or, close any door to that public two-way exchange of comments, and that a few bad apples are ruining it for our community. But at the same time, I think we have parliamentary, we're structured around our meetings and parliamentary procedure to, run these meetings in the most effective, efficient ways. And if we cannot use that while we're using this same tool, we're not being effective. That's my comment.
Next question. Are we in council comments right now, or are we asking questions of the attorney?
In council comments.
We are.
Well, the attorney, he was, that was the city.
I'm still trying to answer any questions the council has.
We're on questions.
Yeah.
Okay,
Please
we're not,
do.
okay. That's, okay. I'm just.
Well, the other thing too, so one of the options, since I'm not seeing any error problems tonight. So one of the things we could do, literally, I presume, is leave it the way it is for a couple more meetings and see if we have any more problems. Because he can shut off audio and video, so nobody coming on can use audio or video until he gives them the release, we have the opportunity to keep anything drastic from happening right away. It's still going to cause a problem if they raise a hand and we don't know the name and we let them come in. But that is an option, I assume, at this point.
It is an option. It requires some user intervention, and that is an option for the council to follow. I'll be honest, terminating Zoom is killing a fly with a hammer. The chances of it happening, I don't want to say are zero, but we were just unfortunate to have it happen in Solvang. The more difficult thing is if council decides it wants to do that kind of limitation of access, how do you administer that consistent with the First Amendment?
That's the problem.
And it is easier to just shut off that, and then you don't have a First Amendment issue because you're still offering the opportunity for in-person comment. This is just one of those anomalies of recent technology that we have to kind of address and deal with. But it is a policy call how the council wants to receive public comment.
Okay.
Can I ask one last question? Because I don't think I heard it, though, from you, Randy. If this was a topic in Sacramento at the last conference, what was the trend? How were most cities handling, or what was the recommendation?
The gentleman that spoke was a councilman from one of the peninsula cities, I want to say San Bruno, San Mateo, and they chose to eliminate Zoom from their meetings altogether.
Any more questions?
Would this be you mentioned gatekeeper into the Zoom and so forth. Would this be something that if we could appoint a sergeant at arms or somebody that would do that role?
Yes, you can appoint a sergeant at arms, but ultimately the mayor is responsible for running the meeting. There are provisions under the Brown Act for clearing the room if a speaker becomes disruptive and is impeding the progress of the meeting. There's case law on how to do that. But typically, that's when you have an in-person commenter who either will not yield the microphone, goes beyond the 3 minutes, is speaking on a topic that is not within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council, and that can be more easily dealt with in person. The difficulty with Zoom is you can have 8, 10, 15, 100 people get online who will, one after another, do this, and then it becomes an interruption, and you can't really just clear the room in that situation because there's no room to clear. It's not a disruption here in the council chambers. So do you clear the Zoom waiting room in that situation and allow public comment to continue in the chambers? These are all the issues that are confronting city attorneys from a legal standpoint that the law hasn't been established fully. We have to go back to the First Amendment, figure out how to do it in consistency with both the Brown Act and the First Amendment. And so rather than getting into a long discussion of what the law is, I'd rather get an idea from the council how you'd like to do it. If you want to do some type of gatekeeping, then we have to come up with a policy to provide the mayor the tools, a sergeant at arms the tools, and figure out how to consistently apply that practice. Whereas if the council is not interested in continuing the Zoom option, then that makes it easy. There's no policy that has to be enacted.
Okay, at this point, I noticed a gentleman with his hand in the back. Do you still want to speak, sir? Please come forward.
I was listening to this. My name is Peter right here. Hi, Robert.
Hi, Peter.
Not my intent to come here on this, but listening to the comments, I think it's very, very valuable to have the ability to come in remote to the meetings. You know, we're all local, we're close, but I would treasure maintaining that. And clearly, you cannot have anonymous people do this, because then you have all the problems you have. And I work in government defense contracting, and no one would let me in a meeting without knowing who that person is. And we all carry these things. If someone walks in the room and is inflammatory, et cetera, we would all be upset. But we know, because we're in a small community. But in general, you should live in Solvang if you're here in these meetings talking, and you should have some identification to be able to assure that. Without that, the comments that you've heard are they're impossible to deal with. But if you have someone who's being obtuse on the phone and you know who they are, then you have ability to somehow react differently than it's a mob of unknown speakers. So anyway, I will leave it. I think it's a really worthy topic. Probably we should all be 20 years younger if we're going to address it properly. But I'll leave it to the board to do the great things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I live in Solvang, but not Solvang proper. We live in Ballard Canyon. Our mailing address is Solvang. So I hope I'm qualified. I'm 71 years old. I am somewhat technologically not as good as my kids who are all IT wizards. That being said, with the right of free speech, which this country gives us, we also have a right as a citizen to participate, a responsibility. This is a small town. If someone is infirm, maybe their neighbor can bring them to the council meeting if they are that engaged. But I think as a citizen of this town, as a citizen of the United States, we have a responsibility to appear in person so that everybody can see our face. The internet and social media has become so anonymous that people say things they would never say to a person's face. Because it's easy. I can just spew out whatever I want to say if I'm online. And I think we need to put some limits and go back to maybe the old-fashioned way of saying, I'm a citizen of Solvang, I'm a citizen of the United States, I have a right to speak, to say whatever is on my mind, but I also have a responsibility to respect others' ideas and other views and have a discussion if there's a real discussion to be had, instead of spewing forth, this is what I want, my way or the highway, which is what happens so much on social media. You get canceled or whatever. So I, as a citizen, would recommend to the council to highly say, no, we need to communicate with our vendors if we need to on Zoom, specifically for them. Yes. For the general public, let them come down to this meeting to verbalize what's important to them. And that's my feeling as a citizen of Solvang, and that's how I feel.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir?
She pretty much said everything that I was going to say, but I want to say also.
Please, who are you, please?
Pete Thompson.
Thank you.
I think Robert's probably the only one here that remembers without this. Am I right? Everybody else here during the pandemic and everything else has been keyed to this stupid screen here. If somebody has something important to say and wants to address something, you come here. That's the way it always has been here. We've become so reliant on screens and technology that it's all this stuff that we're talking about. Oh, let's worry about this, let's worry about this. If we get rid of this, we don't have to worry about all this stuff anymore. Let's get back and make it simple. It's Solvang. Let's just keep it simple. And, you know, the phones and the technology is not all it's cracked up to be anymore, as we've all discovered. So please really think about this. You know, I think we could pretty much do without all this stuff.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Aria View-Doherty, and I want to implore you to leave the Zoom option up, as I go to all the city council meetings, and when I'm unable to attend in person, I go on Zoom, and there are usually a few people on there, quite a few people, and there's often public comment over Zoom. And as a disabled person, a lot of the times I can't come in person, and I have to join on the Zoom. It's not an option for me to come in person every time. And if I wasn't able to speak because of that, I think that would really be a shame and an infringement of free speech. And there's a large elderly population in Solvang, and a lot of them can't or don't want to come in, the very elderly. And to take away their ability to voice their opinions and to say what they have to say would be really unfortunate, and it would be a disservice to Solvang as a whole that really should value the thoughts and ideas of their citizens. So I really do hope that you leave the Zoom option up. I was on the Zoom during the attacks, the Zoom bombs, so I heard what was said, and it was really horrible. It was awful. But despite that, I think it's more important to hear what the people of Solvang have to say, regardless of whether or not they're able to come in person. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else in the audience? Sure.
Hi, Laser Friedman, Isla Vance. I'm the guy in the closet that pushes the buttons. There were probably about 20 or so people that either got kicked out or, I didn't let them in the first place. I was informed maybe 3 or 4 meetings ago by city staff that this was a current trend. So that helped me to not be blindsided. So here, like on the front page of even the ADA thing where people can request 72 hours in advance. And so that might be an option for you guys to, get the local people who are not able to attend, and there's city staff that's on there. There's a dark sky committee that's always on remote. So webinar is basically one-sided, which would kind of be redundant because we have Vimeo, we have YouTube, it's on the city website already. So if you're just going to do webinar, it's kind of redundant. But so you can run the meetings private and just have a password that people are required to put in. And I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Laser. Do we have anybody online that wants to speak to this, since it is Zoom and they are online? Nobody's got their hand up. Okay, we'll bring it back to the council for comments. Would you like to make a comment, Mr.?
I will. It just seems that we went for forever without having Zoom, and then this is another COVID casualty. We started doing Zoom meetings because of COVID, and the restrictions have been lightened up, for now at least. And I don't know what the big deal is that cities run by having a meeting, people come to the meeting and they give their 2 cents and their opinions, and then we're great. But this is all because a couple of years ago we had people couldn't come in here, so we did the Zoom meetings, and now we don't have that. And plus, I would say 90% of the time after an agenda item, Mr. Mayor, you take public comment, then you go, anyone on Zoom? Nope. And then we go back. So I just don't think it's that big of a deal. You want to talk? Come down to the city and talk. Be like, I don't know, social media collapse. That's all I can say. I don't think we need it. And more than a couple, I don't forget what the city I was asking you about when I read that first article that cities were, I think it was Santa Monica, was canceling Zoom because you don't need it. I don't see why we need it. And with this threat, I don't think we need that either. So that's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
I don't think one day when 20 people Zoom bombed us is worth deleting one more way of constituents to get engaged with their government. Sure, you run the risk of awful things being said in the meeting, but there's also lots of reason why people would think that it's convenient to be able to access the meeting from the comfort of their own home. Maybe they're sick, maybe they're disabled, maybe they're out of town, but there is a topic that is very important to them. There's all sorts of reasons why people would want to participate remotely. Again, this happened once out of 3 years. I think most of the interactions that we had with constituents commenting have been positive. Most of them are, if not residents of the Valley or Solvang, people that have a vested interest in it. So I would hate to see this go away, particularly at a time where I've said this time and again, participation in government, in local civic groups, anything that brings the general public together is dwindling down. So something that helps people get more engaged and not less disconnected is helpful.
Thank you. Yes, sir?
One quick one. I think, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, and you were kind of alluding to that earlier, that the engagement for public comment is very valuable and important as your First Amendment right. But at the same time, and I'd like to kind of keep things the way they are, Mayor, perhaps with a little greater security or advance RSVP, if you will, to be at the meeting. Because I don't want to let them win, the thugs and the racist. If they get us off of Zoom, they win. Let's put our, draw the line in the sand, so to speak, and stand firm to what we believe and keep our small town the way it is, and offer that engagement to the public.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
I'm up for that fight. I kind of concur with everything that's been said so far in terms of making sure that we provide ample access to two-way dialogue with our community. And there's been huge value for most of the comments that come over Zoom over the last year. So I'm really reluctant to close the door on that. I am reluctant to, letting the bullies determine how we behave. And as harmful as that can be sometimes, I didn't hear the comments in that last Zoom bomb session. It sounded like they were pretty awful. And I think what you're hearing us deliberate about is that we feel as passionately that should not be part of our public discourse. And we're trying to figure out the right way to accomplish that at the same time. But I think we have some options, which would be to layer some governance and control and identification of who's participating in our two-way dialogue.
So do I take that as a motion that we'll leave it as is for now?
I would say we make a motion to leave it as is while we determine new meeting methodologies to use, passcodes or passwords or identify requests. Requests for access might also be another way to do that.
So if I might, Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
Maybe council direction to leave the Zoom meetings as they are, but have staff return to council with some security protocols and potential options for excluding members who engage in this type of thing, or at least limiting that opportunity. And we can try to come up with some best practices from lessons learned in other agencies that are continuing to offer the Zoom option, and provide those opportunities for the council to make those decisions.
Yeah,
That
I'll
acceptable
make
as
that.
part of your
That's a good motion. Can we make that motion? This is just discussion.
It's just staff
It's just a
direction.
discussion at this
Yeah.
point, yeah.
Okay.
If we can get that returned to us, then, Mr. City Manager?
Do we need a motion and a second, or are we just taking?
No, it's just direction to staff.
Okay.
We're going to keep the Zoom meetings
Okay.
going the way they are, but we'll provide some options maybe as to how to set a policy in place where people either have to, I don't want to say register because there's Brown Act implications of that, but we'll come up with some best practices that we can propose as a policy direction.
Excellent, thank
We'll
you.
do that.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item 6A then, if we may. Ms. Clerk, if you would introduce that.
Discussion to provide direction to staff regarding Measure U Oversight Committee appointment.
Staff report?
All right, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and members of the public. Tonight before you, we'll be talking about approving the Measure U Citizens Oversight Committee recruitment process. But one thing with that recruitment process, we need to look at the qualifications if you're going to require it. Currently, there are no qualifications set forth in the Muni Code for this oversight committee. And Measure U was approved by the voters in November, and we began accruing funds in April of 2023. Attached is the application for the committee and the advertisement for publication. I went through the calendar to try and see if we could work out advertising the application and getting it on the council for approval in December, but the application process would have been too short. So we're looking at council appointment at the January 8th city council meeting. A couple of the qualifications that was in for the planning commission. It's listed as each member of the planning commission shall be a legal resident within the city at the time of his or her appointment and during his or her tenure in office. Several options for qualifications is committee members can be registered voters within the city limits at the time of his or her appointment and during his or her tenure in office. Committee members shall be a legal resident within the city at the time of his or her appointment and during his or her tenure. Or committee members own and operate a business within the city limits. The Measure U Oversight Committee is an advisory committee appointed to the City Council. Appointed by the City Council. The purpose of the committee is to review the revenue and expenditures of the funds from the tax established by Ordinance 220363 and to help ensure accountability to the voters regarding such expenditures. The general duties of the committee are to serve in advisory capacity to the City Council and should have no independent authority to expend or direct the expenditure of funds received by the Measure U, by the city under Measure U. The committee may conduct hearings, review reports, request funding from the City Council for independent audits of Measure U funds, receive presentations, provide comments, make findings and recommendations, and issue reports to the City Council related to implementation of the Measure U and the expenditure of funds received under Measure U. The committee will be comprised of 5 members, and each council member shall appoint 1 member of the Measure U Citizens Oversight Committee. And that concludes my staff report.
Questions from the council?
Yes, will the committee be subject to the Brown Act and meeting agendas?
Yes,
Yeah. No.
and they're required to meet 2 times per year, minimum.
Anybody else? Questions? You want to say something, sir?
I was going to say, we investigated whether or not that was a requirement, and based on the language of the ordinance, it was approved by the voters. It does have to be a council-appointed committee, which then makes it subject to the Brown Act.
And if they are meeting really only 2 times a year, how often will we get their recommendations? Because we're going to be making expenditure decisions really year-round, right?
Yes, and we can have more than 2 meetings. We are just required to have a minimum.
Wouldn't their recommendations then just be put into the semi-annual and annual budget analysis?
Yes. And when the Measure U was adopted, it does list several ideas for expenditures. Some of those was police and fire services and roads and streets, and then other general services.
But the committee is not limited to those. Those are just some of the suggested ones?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I don't have, do we have any, Madam Clerk, do we have any requirement? Does anybody in the audience wish to speak to this item? Anybody on Zoom want to speak to this item? Okay, we'll bring it back to the council for final comments.
I have one comment. I just think it's funny because when you said they'll meet 2 times a year, and the first thing that popped in my head was like, oh, that was like the planning commission during the recession when I was on the planning commission. We met about 2 times a year because nothing was going on. That's funny.
Was that Good or bad? Or-
It's bad.
Yeah.
It was very bad. Maybe when before, I think it was 4 times probably in 2011.
Okay, so at this point in time, I'm sorry.
With regards to your qualifications, I think being a resident of the city would be important. And the other option, though, you said that if they owned a business within the city, you know, I don't know, that's an interesting concept. They have a vested interest, but aren't voters, and so they didn't vote for the tax that's in place. So I think it should probably just retain as a resident of the city.
That's up for you guys to discuss and decide and direct staff.
I wouldn't agree with that for a couple of reasons. Well, let's just take an example. Let's take Max Hamburg. He owns the shoe store, the tower, and a couple of other places. And a lot of the expenditures in the city, he's going to be knowledgeable about and know what's going on. But he doesn't live in the city limits.
Well, that's the potential conflict, is if he's making recommendations, how can we be certain they aren't also benefiting his business? There's a potential conflict there.
Well, okay, but so if you live in the city and you own a business, it's not a conflict?
I think the point was just being made, is a business owner, should that be a criteria?
For example,
That's a good-
I know Don that owns the Fudge Shop, lives in Glida.
Yeah,
So
goes on and on.
it's a tough call.
Yeah. All right, so that's the discussion item that we have to bring up and make a decision and ask staff to write us up what the requirements are
We
going
can't
to
do
be. for
or?
this. It can't be.
I think seeing as this is money that is going to be spent in Solvang that is meant to support the community as a whole rather than something that brings revenue to the city, I think it makes sense to open it to people that live in the city.
But then again, I'm thinking about all these businesses now. My employer lives in Los Olivos, and he's one of the largest employers in the city.
Yeah.
So he has a lot to, I think he would have a say on what happens in this town. Now I'm confused. This is a tough call. I'm okay with having a business owner in Solvang if they live on the moon.
The business owner in Solvang, regardless if they live in
Yes,
Solvang or not.
I'm okay with
We're
that.
okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
And Elizabeth, you're not.
And these people that are raised in Solvang, but for whatever reason do not live in Solvang, but have
Yeah.
had a business in the family for, 4 generations, just because they don't live in the city, I'm okay with having business owners the way it's written.
Money is going to be spent for road repairs and things
Yes.
of that nature, so it's not for their personal income, I don't think.
Well, it could be a road repair in front of their business, or added parking in front of their business, or,
One of,
and they're making a recommendation, they're not making a decision, let's be really clear, yeah.
You could also leave it as no qualifications either.
You know, I actually would,
Anybody can
I
do
actually would prioritize having some ability to read a budget and understand what it costs to, what kind of our typical expenditures are like. So to me, financial acumen is more important or more prioritized.
Well, that brings us
This is
back
the
to
can of worms,
Credential.
the can of worms resolution now.
Okay. It could be.
Mr. Murphy.
I was going to remind council that a business owner is contributing via the sales tax, contributing this Measure U fund
Right.
directly because of the business. The other thing I was going to suggest is that you could limit the number of non-resident business owners so that they're not a majority of the committee. But, maybe say it's not more than 2 or something like that. And it looks like council has an idea
Council
there.
gets
or
to make,
concern.
council gets to make the
The
choice.
attorney's smiling. When I look up at the sky, my head is spinning real quickly. Yes, that is certainly an option. My concern in that situation is if each council member is appointing one, there might be some difference of opinion as to who gets to appoint the person who is a business owner, who is not, and so on. So council would need to consider that if that's the case.
Okay, and this can be tweaked down the road, too. I mean, we may not find enough business owners that want to serve on a committee to meet 2 to 4 times a year.
But for right now, we're to direct the staff.
Leave it the way it is.
Put together a requirement so that people can apply to be on this committee.
Yeah, we'd just ask, can we add something? I'm looking at the application which you all submitted, which is looking for feedback. Can we add something that at least has them disclose or discuss what their financial background is and what history they have in
Well, they would have to fill out
budget
Form
management?
700.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, and they
that's
would
not
also
finance.
fill out an application where they have to say why they're qualified to do what they're going to do.
It doesn't say that right now. It's
It
just a
doesn't say that right
background.
now?
It's just basically background, community involvement and civic activities. And which meetings have you attended? It's pretty
If you own a business-
non-specific.
If you own a business, you've got to have some understanding of finance.
Well, you would think, or you've hired somebody to do that.
That's true. I use my wife, and she does know all that stuff. Yes, sir.
I was going to say the application does have space for them to talk about their professional educational background. Can also be part of the interview process. Obviously,
Just find out that way.
you could find out and ask those questions. So, where the staff is looking for council's direction on this with the idea, unless you want to change something on the application and/or the qualifications, this is what we were prepared to run with, so. And that would be what was put in the advertisement, and then that would be the criteria you would use to select.
You know, you've kind of changed my mind thinking about people that are invested in the community, but they don't necessarily live here. So maybe just leave those two options open. They can either be a resident of Solvang or they can have business in Solvang. And then hopefully we'll make a wise decision when we appoint about,
Each one
who
of us
should
will
be.
make a
Yeah.
decision based
Yeah.
on those.
But it would.
Got to be voted on
yeah.
anyway, excuse me, it has to be voted on, so,
Yeah, well, we all have to agree.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
so I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
Do I hear unanimous consent from the council?
So non-resident, no resident requirement, is that what we're saying?
I mean, they should either be a
Resident
resident
or
or they
business
can.
Yeah. We're voting?
It's not a vote, it's just a discussion
Okay.
and a direction to staff.
You
So-
do need to approve the application process with the change to include a resident of Solvang or business owner in Solvang. So the recruitment process would be that we take applications from October 25th to December 6th with council appointment at the January 8th council meeting.
Everybody agree?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we all agree.
So you want to do a motion?
Do we need to do a motion? Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, please.
So a motion to approve the recruitment process for the Measure U Oversight Committee with the qualifications to be a resident of Solvang or a business owner in Solvang.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Clark.
Yes.
Councilmember Claudia Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Elizabeth Arona.
Yes.
Mayor Infante.
Yes,
Motion passes 5-0.
thank you very much. Let's move to 6B. Madam Clerk, if you would introduce that subject for us, please.
Discussion and possible direction to staff regarding city position on potential mask and vaccine mandates.
Staff report.
So at a meeting, a couple of meetings ago, it was requested to put this item on the agenda in light of the recent surge in COVID, along with the fact that other jurisdictions have taken a stand against mask and vaccine mandates. We brought this forward. The resolution that I've included with the staff report was adopted on October 3rd by Huntington Beach City Council by a 4-3 vote. And basically, they're saying we're not going to comply with mask or vaccine mandates by the city or the federal government. I presented as a fiscal impact that there is not an immediate, should the city decide to do this, not an immediate fiscal impact. However, there could be consequences later on. I've seen the federal and/or state government not allow or provide funding for certain things if you don't play by the rules. One that jumps to mind was a few years ago when some of the states were resistant to lowering the blood alcohol for drunk driving. And the federal government essentially said, fine, we're just not going to give you highway tax monies. So they have a way of getting you to comply if you choose not to. So I just throw that out as a caution. Options for this included direct staff to modify the attached resolution and bring it back at a future meeting for adoption. Direct us to do additional research and bring the finding back for continued discussion, or do nothing, or the fourth alternative always is another option is directed by council majority. And that's my staff report, and I'm ready for any questions.
Thank you. Questions on the council?
No.
Can you clarify what you just said, Randy, about state funding? What did you just say? Clarify that.
Well, what I said, I was just throwing a caution out that should the council choose to adopt a position similar to what Huntington Beach has done, that it is possible that the state or the federal government at some future date could say, because you're not playing by our rules, we're going to not give you other funding. I've seen them do it in other instances, and the one I gave was specific to the to the blood alcohol, or what legal definition of drunk driving is, where they've done that. So it's just throwing a caution out that although there is no fiscal impact directly right now, and there may never be, but it is possible that they may decide to do something.
Okay. Any other questions?
No questions, but plenty of comments.
Yeah. Okay, there are public comment. I have one speaker's request. Keith Adler, sorry. Now you can speak, Keith. This is your subject. Thanks.
Certainly changes my speech, but that's all right. We'll try to wing it here. So once again, I'm Keith Adler, and Solvang resident, and you know, I hardly know where to begin on this one, but who cares about making a stand on vaccines and masks right now? I mean, you know, 3.5 years after, you know, the beginning of the pandemic, I mean, we're still talking about this. I mean, who cares, really? I mean, there were plenty of people, even when masks were mandated, that didn't wear them. No one was arrested. No one had a problem with that. There's plenty of people that didn't get vaccinated. I don't see anybody getting arrested. I don't see anybody forcing people to get vaccinated. Right now, the vaccination rate for a single dose of COVID in Santa Barbara County is close to 80%. That means you're talking about a 20% minority that maybe wants this resolution. I mean, come on now. People fully vaccinated in Santa Barbara County, 71. Okay? I mean, why are you taking a non-issue and making it an issue? And following the city of Huntington Beach, one of the laughing stocks of Southern California, a great choice to emulate, guys, you know? So, you know, how many hours have you spent discussing marketing and hotel occupancy rates? How do you think the publicity from this item is going to affect vacation planning? How is it going to hit social media? Okay? Do you want to go down that rabbit hole again? If you want to exercise your freedom, maybe you should ride a motorcycle without a helmet. Maybe you should drive your car without a seatbelt. Those are kind of mandated. I can just see the headlines now. City of Solvang joins the city of Huntington Beach in the toilet bowl of stupidity. Thanks.
Thank you thank you very much.
Progressives always call names.
Damian Greitman?
This isn't church. There is a front row here available. Those in the aisle could sit down, please.
Hi, I'm Damian Kreitman, Solvang resident. The years of living with increasingly oppressive COVID restrictions and mandates is a tale of many villains complicit in tyranny. The actions of Californian politicians can only be described as medically idiotic, economically ruinous, socially disruptive and embittering, culturally dystopian, and politically despotic. Californian politicians destroyed lives, livelihoods, and liberties, and effectively stole 3 years of our lives. Their deliberate interventions inflicted devastating social, economic, educational, physical, and mental health costs, especially on young people, in the long term, even though they were at negligible risk of serious harm. It should not and could not possibly have been a surprise to any health specialist that as social creatures, human beings are literally scarred by state diktats promoting the message that humans are disease-ridden biohazards. California's political class proved to be cruel, heartless, and deadly. We have to relearn two abiding verities. Once government has acquired more powers, they rarely relinquish them voluntarily. And in any new power that can be abused will be abused, if not today by current agents of the state, then sometimes in the future by their successors. Like people with command responsibility when crimes against humanity are committed, the highest level of decision makers need to be held to account. This is important to ensure misdeeds are punished, victims are helped to achieve closure, and future acts of comparable malfeasance are deterred. The question remains, will COVID tyranny, because that's what it was, be rolled back, or has it become a permanent feature of the political landscape in California? The head says to fear the worst, but the eternally optimistic heart still hopes for the best. This city has a chance to do the right thing. Please make a stand for our freedoms and wholeheartedly support this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joanne Clark.
When the name Albert Einstein is mentioned, it is safe to say that it is synonymous with what we consider to be wise, intelligent, and even genius. Albert Einstein's definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. We have seen firsthand the negative and even devastating results of mandates such as mass closures and vaccines. In the 1960s, we were warned about the dangers of smoking. There was finally enough evidence that it was causing lung cancer. Warnings were printed on the packages they came in. Since the COVID pandemic and time following when people were taking vaccines, they have proof that vaccines can and do cause blood clots and heart failure. People have died as a result of taking the vaccines. Can you imagine if the state decided to require all small children and all adults to smoke? That would be a requirement. It would be absolutely absurd. No one would follow such an edict. Requiring vaccines known to cause death is equally absurd. Citizens have a right to choose. It's a basic right stated in our Constitution. If people do not want to be exposed to other people, they do not have to interact with them. If someone wants to wear a mask, they are welcome to do so. If someone does not want to wear a mask, they should be equally welcome not to. If someone wishes to take a vaccine, they are free to do so. If we believe the vaccines to be dangerous to our health, we should not be forced to take them. We should not be forced to wear on or put into our bodies anything we do not feel is safe for us. We have constitutional rights as citizens to choose for ourselves and not be fear-mongered, bullied, and forced to do something we feel is dangerous for our health and safety. Please do not allow our rights to be taken away from us again. The results will be the same. Do not let insanity begin again. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And in light of what this gentleman said, you don't have to stand up and make an edict now, but you can make a decision that if this happens and mandates are required, that then you can step up and say, no, we're not going to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Elaine Klassen. Dr. Elaine Klassen. She's coming.
Thank you. And I'm very glad I get to speak after the previous few speakers. I am Elaine Klassen, Dr. Elaine Klassen, and I live in Santa Ynez. However, I think that because we know disease doesn't have town barriers, And I am shopping in stores with members from our 5 towns, and I am attending religious events, and I am shopping at stores in Solvang that I think I have a right to express my opinions, even though I am not a Solvang resident. I live in San Ynez. I have 3 things to say. I didn't write prepared remarks, even though I'm a writer, but I just want to speak from the heart. I have 3 points I'd like to make on this issue. First of all, I'm a graduate of the University of Michigan School of Public Health. I have a master's degree in public health and a doctorate. I taught for many years at San Jose State University. There is no hard science that does not support having a mask and having vaccines. All of the CDC information, all of the epidemiological information supports how helpful it is against a terrible disease to have masks and to have vaccinations. It is not a feeling issue. I have heard the word feeling several times mentioned. This isn't about feelings. This is about hard science. And as a hard science graduate, I'm dismayed that we can say that we have feelings about an issue of health. I want us to live with science. It's very hard to do right and wrong, and I think this and you think this. One of the few things we have in life is science. And there is such good, hard evidence about helping keep us safe and reducing the numbers of emergency room visits, hospitalizations, and deaths if we follow simple health guidelines. And I want to stress that I'm glad people feel that they have independence and they can do what they want in life, and who am I to tell you what to do? The problem is I am affected by my community's actions. I am affected by people not taking simple, kind care to keep this disease from not getting out of control. And it is very possible that we're encountering another increase. So that's number 1 on science. Number 2, Mr. Adler spoke about PR. I think that's a pretty important thing. I'm a former columnist for the Santa Barbara County newspapers. I'm a writer. And I do not see that we are doing ourselves any favor by acting with communities that are not following science. And finally, I'll just make a personal plea. I am 77 years old, I have respiratory illness, and I do not want to live in a community that doesn't care about my health and welfare.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pete Thompson?
Hi again. I understand everybody's point of view here. I think what we have to bring back is what we're talking about here as a community. And this isn't just about COVID. This is about, like what you talked about. There's a lot of things that our state and the state and federal government can make us do. I think we want to try and keep our community as tight as we can and not let all these things affect us. Keep it local, and that's what your job is. You're Solvang, right? Let's try and make sure that we keep Solvang safe and the way we want it, not the way Sacramento wants it or Washington, D.C. wants it. This is our community and our community only, and this is what we're here for, our community, right? Okay, so let's all get together. I don't care whose side you're on. Let's all get together and make this a community again, because I think we've lost a little bit of that. A lot of that. The community has become so divisive. For what? We're a community, aren't we? Everybody here lives here?
Please address the council.
Addressing everybody, because this is for everybody.
Please address the council. Thank you.
I think I've made my point.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Pete.
Jerry Harmon?
Good evening. I did a study on all things COVID over the last 2 years. Here's what I've learned, as well as everyone else that has applied themselves to this public information. So I'm about to tell you, it's not anything that I made up. Number one, the government lied to us multiple times and punished those that didn't go along with their lies. They punished them with censorship, loss of jobs, licenses to practice medicines. This all happened. Number two, there wasn't a single study that showed that disposable cloth masks worked. In fact, many doctors refer to the example of using a cloth mask or these disposable masks pretty much on par for using a chain link fence to keep mosquitoes out. Number three, in Dr. Brick's book, who worked alongside Fauci, came clean and admitted to the 6-foot discretionary rule was made up, not based on science or proof. Number four, Dr. Fauci and the government lied to us about what vaccines could do. They said, hey, if you get the jab, you won't get COVID nor transmit it to others. In fact, it is a well-known fact that those people who have gotten the most COVID exposure were those that got the jab in comparison to those that did not. Number five, the government lied to us as to where COVID came from. We now know via emails made public that it did come from the Wuhan lab in China and that the U.S. government helped to fund it. Dr. Michelle Lewinsky from the CDC lied about the COVID deaths count. She finally came clean and said only 25% of the reported deaths were from people with zero comorbidities. At the time she did that, we had 800,000 reported deaths. That meant that 200,000 people actually died from pure COVID. That was over a 2-year time period. That meant 100,000 people per year. So I went back and I checked the statistics for how many people actually passed from no comorbidities from the influenza, and it was 80,000 during the 2018-19 time period. Excuse me, just got off a plane. So we basically had a $20,000 person count increase in deaths, not what they told you in the media. The government covered up the vaccine injuries and prohibited the medical community from reporting them. The amount of COVID experienced vaccine injuries actually totaled more than all the other experimental vaccine injuries by several decades. Results, you know what they were. Children with problems, schools had problems, our elderly had problems. Bottom line, you guys are not doctors. You should not be mandating anything. I would really like to see this community be the leader. And remember, a lot of us do subscribe to that. It's my body and my choice. Please.
Thank you very much. Joe Nats?
Sorry, I have to speak again, and this time I put an MD after my name.
I noticed.
I graduated from the University of Kansas, did my residency at UMKC, practiced for 24 years as an OB-GYN. I list the last 5 years as head of women's health at Arizona State University, and also occupational health at Arizona State University for the Department of Animal Research. So that's my resume in a nutshell. I appreciate Dr. Clausen's concern with what everybody else is doing, but as was previously stated, the virion, the virus that causes COVID, passes through a KN95 like that. It is like a mosquito going through a chain link fence. That mask will help. Why do surgeons? I was a surgeon. Why do I wear a mask when I go in the operating room? So that my germs, my bacteria germs, don't get into the wound of the person I'm operating on. That is the science, okay? Masks do not prevent the transmission of viruses. It will catch all the snot. It will prevent bacteria from getting through. But a virus is much too small to pass through the mask. But the question is, should Solvang issue a mandate similar to what Huntington Beach said, saying we will not require masks? Now, you can choose to table this and say, we'll wait to see if the problem comes up, because I know how federal government does. It steps on doctors. Doctors lost their license if they, for instance, prescribed ivermectin or tried to, which has been shown in multiple studies to reduce the incidence of serious illness. Okay? That is now a fact. And you want to deal with facts and not emotions. So facts, mask, if Dr. Clausen wants to wear a mask wherever she goes, that may help prevent droplets from getting on. Washing her hands frequently, bringing wipes. That is her choice to do. But to mandate that that must be done again, given the draconian laws that California instrumented against its citizens, okay, I ask this council to think, what is science, what is opinion? You can look up the science yourself. You can do an online search, efficacy of. At one point in England, 90% of the hospitalizations of COVID all were vaccinated. 90% of the hospitalizations had all been completely vaccinated. So that vaccine, and I believe in vaccines, and I had my COVID vaccine for the first two till after so much data was coming through about the damages that could occur. Okay, so be realistic. You can take a stand. You can worry about PR, or you can wait and see if it's mandated. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have no more slips. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak? I've got 3 or 4 people who are raising hands. Yes, sir. If you want to, please step to the podium.
My name's Randy Page. I'm a citizen of Solvang, and I would just, we've heard both sides of mask, no mask vaccines. How would the city enforce this, even if you did pass it?
Perfect question.
Yeah, how would you do it? There's no vaccine passports, phone apps, or anything like that. How would you address religious freedom accommodations? I personally have one at a defense company I work at. And so I didn't have to get vaxxed because it was my religious belief not to get vaccinated. So how would the city address that? Are they prepared to address that? Thank you. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you for your questions. It's good. Yes, sir.
Thank you again. I'm Jim Stewart. I did put my name, I did file something earlier.
6D? Oh, you were earlier, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just brief comments. I feel this issue is far greater than the issue of just, and it's not just, but the issue of COVID. The city of Solvang is unique in the world, in my opinion. We live in a bubble here. There's no other way to say it. It is a beautiful place to live, and we have a right and a need to make our decisions for ourselves. The state of California has mandated many, many things that are not in the interests of the people. The issue of COVID, you've heard medical people say that this is a black and white issue, that it's necessary. It is not a black and white issue. It is crystal clear that there are numerous reports that there's uncertainty about the COVID vaccine. I personally have experienced the loss of a dear friend who was vaccinated. I know now of a man who I work with who is suffering from the effects of being vaccinated. This is something that is a decision to be made between an individual and his doctor, and not by anybody else telling them how to live their lives. And in my opinion, this issue is far greater, and I urge you to think about it in terms of the overall of having a community that is not subject to mandates, because if there's a mandate here, there'll be mandates on other things that we may not want in the future. And I would say be very, very careful about government in general. I believe that companies like Pfizer have made billions of dollars through COVID mandates that may not have been necessary. And we as individuals are the ones who are paying for that. So I just thank you very much for even considering this. I think the Huntington Beach resolution was a very, very wise thing for a mature city, regardless of what you heard tonight, and I urge you to consider the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Yes, ma'am.
Hi there. I want to thank you for hearing us tonight about our concerns.
Pull the microphone down to you so you can,
Thank you very much. My name is Grace. In light of the doctor that was here earlier, she left. She's a resident of Santa Ynez. I'm a resident of Santa Ynez. And these mandates, we are close-knit. We're all in the valley together. So what affects Solvang actually affects Santa Ynez. And so as a healthcare, I've been a nurse for 30-plus years, and I've worked through the COVID pandemic. And so I can tell you that it has been my clinical experience that those who have received the vaccine are those who are repeatedly being exposed to COVID time and time again. The rigorous testing that the pharmaceutical companies normally put into the vaccine, maybe 70-plus years, they did not do that for COVID. I'm exposed to people who do research. There wasn't enough research on the COVID vaccine. And I can tell you, my colleagues and myself are seeing people repeatedly with heart issues, blood clot issues. People have died. The gentleman that just spoke, he is true. I have people in my family that are affected by this jab because they were forced to get it. If you can't get it, you can't go into a store, right? They did that in the Valley, and it was terrible. Businesses suffered. The economic disaster that has happened because of COVID over the last 3 years, there are many people who have lost their job, who have lost their health. Family have died. Businesses have been closed down, and they'll never recover. Economically, it has affected each and every one of us, right, down to one income. And still, people are still willing to entertain this and to allow this to come in. My body, my choice, it works for other issues. I applied for religious freedom, and I went through the ringer just to be able to get that. I have the right, according to the Constitution, I have the religious freedom for exemption. And I know why I'm saying no to the vaccine. And yet my religious freedom was not respected. People were denied medical exemptions for it. I know that as a fact. And so I'm asking each and every one of you council member to think clearly about the Constitution of America that we are seeing sliding. It is like if we don't protect our rights as citizens of America, we have nothing. We have the Constitution for a reason. Please protect the people. We are protecting our children as well, because we need to stand up and to protect our families and our children. Okay? And I'm speaking as a person that has seen the effects of it for the last 3 years.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Please come to the podium.
My name is Jenny Stewart, and I also live in Solvang. I have just a few points because all the other points have already been made brilliantly by other people here tonight. We have close friends. He's a neurologist, and his companion both were vaxxed and boosted and everything you could think of, and they both got, COVID. So it has not been effective for many people that we know. I have followed it closely and know that myocardosis, where it goes into, especially for young men in their heart, it lodges there. That studies with that have been coming out. And the only other thing I will mention on an economic thing, Pfizer, the Pfizer stock has been dropping because they boosted the price for the new COVID vaccines at least 4 times, and most people across the country are saying no thanks. So I think that means something. Thank you very much for listening to us on this.
Thank you. Do you have anybody else in the audience that would like to speak? I see a couple of hands on Zoom. I believe that's Susan Bott. Susan?
Yes, thank you. I'm Susan Bott, and I'm a resident of Solvang living within the city limits. I'm opposed to Solvang adopting a resolution similar to that of Huntington Beach. The first paragraph of your staff report seems to have contradictory information. First, you talk about there being a surge in COVID statistics, by which I assume you mean an increase in COVID cases. If that is true, wouldn't mandates regarding masks and vaccinations be more needed rather than less? It seems adopting such a resolution would put limitations on the city's response to a future emergency. There's no need to take such action at this point when the opposite might be essential down the road. We always seem to come down to the necessity of pointing out that our treasured freedoms are not absolute. You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Your freedoms stop at the point of infringing on another person's rights or endangering someone's person or property. Please table this issue until there's a definite need for further action. Thanks for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. I have another person on Zoom. I can't read that one. David, Randy, can you help me?
Don't say Henry.
Looks like blue something?
BT Westel.
There you go.
Hi. I really was not prepared to speak tonight at all, but I'm listening to this. Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Bobby Westel, a resident of Solvang. And like I said, I really wasn't prepared to speak tonight, but I'm so moved to do so because I think there's so many divisive issues in this country, in this city. I don't know why we're bringing up something now that is just going to add to the divisiveness that we have right now. Why is this an issue? I don't see it as an issue. I'm not talking about pro-vaccines or against vaccines or whether or not we should vaccine or wear masks, but why is this being brought up today? So that's my only comment, and I would like to have this discussion tabled until it becomes an issue. So that's my only comment. I hope you listen to it and move on. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else on Zoom? Okay. In that case, we'll bring it back to the council. Comments, questions?
Yes, well, okay, my first comment is that I am reading the resolution of Huntington Beach saying that they are a no mask and no vaccine mandate city. Solvang is a no mask, no vaccine mandate city because we don't have a mandate. We never had that mandate. The discussion today is not about having that mandate. Now, my question here is to legal counsel. Is this seriously all that we need to get Sacramento off of our backs? Can we say that, can we pass a ban on housing requirements? Can we pass a ban on gas taxes? Is this seriously all that we need to do to keep laws from affecting our city? Because there's a lot of issues that Sacramento puts on us that we would love to not deal with. Can we put a ban on district elections? Is this effective? Is this effective to make policy?
You're asking for a legal opinion on it. I think Huntington Beach has taken very aggressive legal positions, and they have repeatedly been spurned by the courts. The courts are the ultimate arbiter of what is legal and what is not legal, and Huntington Beach has been told on a number of occasions that their actions are not consistent with the law. If it were just this easy to pass a resolution and exempt the city of Solvang from state actions, believe me, I would have been the first to draft those resolutions and ordinances in the past at council's direction. But that's not the way the law works. The law is interpreted according to precedent and according to the Constitution and according to the statutes that are passed by the elected legislature in Sacramento. And so until that system changes, I don't think Huntington Beach's resolution carries a lot of weight legally.
Okay, thank you. So I don't see why we need to make a stand on things that are not happening. I'm going to remind everybody that lived through COVID here in Solvang. Basically, people were regulating themselves. We did not force anybody to wear a mask. There was code enforcement. Debbie was not going out there checking that everybody was wearing a mask. Stores and restaurants were allowed to regulate themselves and set their own policies, and I really don't think it's the city's business to tell anybody how to conduct business, how to keep themselves safe, or what vaccines to take or not take. At this point, I don't see what passing something like this is going to do other than get us a heck yes from some people and get a you should be ashamed of yourselves from other people when we have other more important things to talk about.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mark, can I go next? Because I'm going to refute that. If I could go next.
Oh, bring it up.
Sure.
No.
Easily.
At the bottom line, well, I'm going to be polite, there are other cities that are in the same boat that we are, and I understand that Huntington Beach is a little out there. And there are other cities that are planning on doing the exact same thing that we're doing, because I keep in touch with a lot of people. I was here when COVID started, and I was here when the city shut down. It's very important for cities in California to send a message to Sacramento to say, we are not going to go through this again. And they will get the message. No great idea requires force, but that's lost on the state of California. So that's why I brought this up. It's important for cities to tell Sacramento that we will not go along with this again because you shut us down. Folks, we are the third most reliant city on tourist occupancy tax. If we don't have heads in beds, we don't have a budget. We laid off people. We had empty streets for months. Businesses were getting money from the federal government. Businesses were getting money from us, from the city council, the taxpayers. It was really cool because they all paid it back. The city did come together. That's why this whole thing came around, is to hopefully get more cities to say, Sacramento, stop it. It didn't work last time. It's not working this time. If you look at Florida and California, yeah, Florida's out there because they got the crazy governor. But Florida had the least restrictive state. California had the most restrictive state, and we had the exact same COVID results. The economy in California suffered, education suffered, unemployment suffered, the GDP went down. The social ills, don't even start with me on that. Mental health, suicides, shutdowns were not working. They did much, much more harm than good. The benefits did not, the harm outweighed the benefits by far in the state of California. And all I'm trying to do is and there are other cities that will be coming forth, 8 states have told the federal government, we are not going to comply with shutdowns. We're not going to comply with mandates. No one's saying you don't have to wear, no one's saying you can't wear a mask. Obviously, you can wear a mask. You can lock yourself in the home. I don't care. But it's just a matter of letting Sacramento know that, look, we can't go through this again. We went through 2 years of really, really hard times through shutdowns, and it didn't prove anything as far as health outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown?
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the passion of that. But I also think that if we want to make it a difference in Sacramento, you do that at the ballot box. And if it goes your way, great. If it doesn't, that's another choice. But I think that with regards to having a mandate of this, I think is rather hypocritical from our earlier discussion of free speech and things of that nature, that we need to, I think we don't really need a mandate because it would be like going against the Army with a bunch of slingshots. So what? The only way I think that this will work is if you wish not to have these shots or masks, it's just civil disobedience if somebody puts up a mandate that you have to do it. So you have a right to do it, you have a right not to do it. I think if it is mandated, civil disobedience would be your option, but I don't think a mandate from our city would be of any significance.
Thank you very much.
I do want to
Yes,
make
ma'am?
a quick comment, and I do want to, I think it was Grace. Grace is the nurse in the audience tonight who actually makes me want to say this. I think that a couple things with regard to COVID, I think we all suffered. And we all suffered in different ways and to varying degrees. And somehow we just need to look at each other and acknowledge that this was really a bewildering experience and be compassionate as we come out of this. The good news is, there's some good news. We take some learnings, and we learned a lot. And we've had a couple of spikes in this variant, and we haven't had or experienced another mandate at all. So the reaction from whatever entity we're thinking about that's governing, we haven't seen a mandate in the various spikes that we've had this year, over the last year and a half, to see a mandate, imposed. So to me, it doesn't make sense to answer a mandate that no one was happy with a different mandate that imposes a different set of conditions on potentially another half of our constituents or our public or our 1.5 million visitors that come here a year. So heads and beds are actually visitors that come from other cities, and we're better off being like other cities than singling ourselves out and being very unique, or actually signaling to the state that we are contradicting or ready to contradict any direction they give us or put potential state funding at risk. This is not worth the risk. The benefit is not worth the risk, and there is no mandate. So it's no real issue for us to answer. Do nothing is absolutely an option while we remain vigilant, while we remain careful and care for each other, and pay attention, because our health and our community vitality is really critical. So let's take it on. I would say we take it on when it really becomes an issue.
Okay, so I think what I've heard from three other people, besides Mr. Clark, is that we don't want to direct the city to come up with a mandate. This is a discussion to provide direction to the staff, and so the direction at this time, I believe, and I'll ask everybody to say yay or nay, is that we don't do anything. We do not provide a mandate.
Agree.
Agreed?
Yeah.
Mr. Clark is going to say no.
Lay down for Sacramento.
Okay. 4 out of 5 disagree with the mandate, so we'll move on. Let's go to item 6C. Madam Clerk, if you'd read that into the record, please.
Discussion and possible direction to staff regarding improvement projects in Hans Christian Andersen Park.
Staff report.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I am Jenny McClurg, your Parks and Recreation Director, and we have Roger Olds here, our Public Works Director, and so we're going to kind of tag team this. All right, so we are here tonight to seek direction on the Hans Christian Andersen Park, including the pickleball courts and other potential improvements. And first, I want to emphasize the purpose of being here tonight, coming before you, is we want to be transparent, and we want to be able to hear from all of the communities that this will affect. So the pickleball courts were initially constructed by Solvang staff in the November of 2020. The courts were on are on two concrete slabs that measure 60 feet by 30 feet. Each slab was constructed in a manner that is consistent with general concrete flatwork construction, which includes expansion joints every 10 feet in all directions, but not necessarily right for a sport court. So these expansion joints were filled with a flexible fill material, and hard colored surface was installed to create the court plane surface and boundaries. The city opened the courts, the pickleball courts, on May of 2021, and in December of 2021, staff applied and received or was awarded the Prop 68 grant funding for a total of $177,952 to go towards park improvements. Part of that funding was to go to additional needs of the pickleball courts, such as fencing, benches, hardscape, and landscape. Staff developed a plan for the completion of the courts, which included drainage improvements, fencing, and additional hardscape around the courts. Before construction of the planned improvements, staff started getting complaints regarding the court surface at the expansion joints. After examination and research with industry professionals, it has been determined that the flexible expansion material and the expansion and contraction of the slabs is not compatible with the necessary hard surfacing needed for pickleball playing surface. The solution is either a full replacement and underlying concrete slabs of the construction of a new slab over the existing courts, which would add about 7 inches to the elevation of the existing courts. And then in August of 2023, council approved the capital improvement program, which included $275,000 for improvements to the pickleball courts. This included $99,000 of grant funding to be reimbursed to the city, as well as $176,000 from the general fund. The pickleball courts are heavily used in the mornings and late afternoon and evenings, and the city recognizes that pickleball is the fastest growing sport. So as presented at the meeting, staff has analyzed options, and we are here tonight to get some direction. And just a couple of things to note. I did note that the pickleball is the fastest growing sport, but then secondly, we do want to keep in mind that we did receive funding from the late Harry Stearns, and that money was to go towards the tennis courts, and that's what we used to, in 2020, we did a post slab concrete, and we fixed those tennis courts. So I'll let Roger take it from here with the options.
All right. Thank you, Jenny. We've looked at a few different options, and as we were looking at this, we came to some conclusions, and we figured we should probably bring it to you for direction. The repair of the pickleball courts as they exist will require the full closure of the courts during construction. We're looking at probably around a 3 to 6 month time frame. So the discussion was, okay, while we're doing that, we would probably or put some temporary pickleball courts at the tennis courts just during construction. But we just wanted to introduce that. So here's the first option that we were looking at. This is a picture from the plan that we had previously developed, which was before we realized that we needed to completely resurface the courts. But overlay the existing courts with a 5-inch thick post-tension concrete slab with about 2 inches of sand in between, so that basically ultimately raises up 6 inches. Install fencing and new planks. Install fencing and then some new surfacing. You can't really see my pointer. It's supposed to be a laser pointer here, but anyways. And some other areas, basically filling in the areas between the courts so that it's not dirt, so you're not tracking dirt all over the place, and it makes for just a nicer experience and a place for people while they're waiting to play. We can put a couple benches. And then some other site improvements. We estimated the cost somewhere in the $225,000 to $250,000 range for this, and the net result is 2 courts. 2 pickleball courts.
Can we ask questions while you're going through the options?
Absolutely.
Or do you want us to wait?
No, feel free.
How do we handle the 7-inch elevation and change here? Do we need to build anything else, or does that make it better or more accessible or less accessible?
It would actually make it a little less accessible. We would have to import some material to fill in, because right now everything is right at the elevation of where the courts are. So we raise everything 7 inch. Well, now we need to raise up the rest of the world around that about 7 inches. There's a couple of slopes that come in that probably wouldn't have to be, maybe you lift up a little bit.
And that cost includes all that?
This cost would include that additional grading, yeah. but it would also make the accessibility. If we're looking to make an ADA accessible route, now we got to come up an additional 7 inches with a ramp, which is another probably 8 to 10 feet of ramp. So if we're looking to do something along those lines, that's an additional increase. We don't have it's not included in the existing plan, but that's something that we need to be considered. Option 2 would be to demolish the existing courts and see how many courts we can fit into the site. This was just a very rough schematic. I had reached out to an engineering firm, and it was in order to do a survey, because if we do some grading here, it would also impact the road, which we have access to the yard and for utilities. There's a couple well sites and some sewer manholes that we need to access there. So that road that gets back there, and then it's also a fire road that connects all the way to 246. So we would need to make sure that we keep that whole or make some adjustments to that. But then also do some additional grading work. This would be a much more impactful project. And then we would bring in, again, new post-tension slabs. We would likely fit at least 2, because we know 2 fit there now, but we would try to fit 3, and that cost would be estimated $275,000, which is $275,000, which is the current budget plus. So it's, once we get done with the design, then we would cost it out and figure out exactly what we're looking at. So it would really, depending on how much grading we got to do. But again, while we're doing the grading, we might do the grading first, which would then we would relocate the pickleball courts up to the tennis courts for use, so that pickleball players can still play pickleball. And then we would grade it out, and then probably have a contractor come in and put the post-tension slabs and everything else.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Why didn't the first pickleball courts were constructed in this manner? Was it a question of cost? Was it?
I don't have the answer to that. I do know that it was done in-house, and it was budgetary constraints were probably a consideration. They wanted to do it. They did bring in a contractor to build the concrete slabs, but it was not done. I don't know who made that decision.
Maybe not somebody that builds courts, but that lays concrete for anything else.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So if you were laying a concrete patio, concrete flat work, or anything else, this is exactly the way you want to do it. They did a great job. However, this is not. This is a play court where you need to span longer than 10 feet. So again, going back to the previous, they had these expansion joints, but then you fill that in. The pictures that you saw initially in that first slide, those were taken about a year and a half after we opened the courts. So that's how long that lasted, and that was with the fingernail you're popping up the surfacing. And that surface, it's probably around $10,000 to $15,000 to have someone come in and resurface these courts, just to put that, because it's a very, very specific, very particular type of resurfacing. So, one could say, hey, let's just resurface these things. Okay, well, we're going to be spending $10,000 to $15,000 every year and a half, and it's not really the best way to go. But we could save a little money that way, but that's kind of how we found ourselves here in the first place.
Do we know how often these would need to be maintained? Or resurfaced, or?
Well, if it's post-construction, if it's post-tension concrete, it's, I'm not sure what the duration, but the existing tennis courts were resurfaced around the same time frame, and they're holding up fine, no issues, no problems.
Okay.
And the spans are much greater in size.
Okay, thank you.
Option 3, which it occurred to us was a potential option, was to provide the pickleball courts on the existing tennis ball courts, which was, once we started looking at this, we're just like, okay, well, we're going to move what's it going to take? We need to start taking some action if we're going to actually build this thing. What's it going to take to put some pickleball courts up on these tennis courts temporarily? And then we started scratching our head. It's like, wow, we're planning on spending $250,000 to get 2 tennis ball courts, to get 2 pickleball courts, when we might be able to get 4 to 6 pickleball courts for $20,000. So, and then we would be able to repurpose the remainder of the grant funds and the other general fund monies for other needs that we might have at the park. So that's, again, so this was an option 3 that we wanted to bring to council and let them know. And of course, bring in public comment as well, because this is impacting the people that play tennis, is they're going from 4 courts to potentially 2 courts. This option, we would look at repurposing the remainder of the Prop 68 monies to go towards other park amenities at Hans Christian Andersen Park that were already part of the grant application, which would be trail improvements, potential workout facilities on the trails. Was another thing that we applied for. Also, maybe other park benches. So the idea here is that we would relocate these, or we would put the pickleball courts on the existing tennis courts, and then the slabs that are now failing, could potentially use those for some rest areas, some picnic tables, or do something with them, or remove them and make them part of something else. So again, I just wanted to go over Proposition 68. Jenny did a good job of going through that, but the city was awarded $177,000, or almost $178,000. There is a local match required of $40,000, and approximately $99,000 is left over. So that is grant funds that we have. It's reimbursable funds that we have that we do have to spend. So the current CIP approval includes the general fund contribution of $176,000 for the pickleball court construction. And the $99,000 is, again, it's grant funds that they're, unless we get an extension on the grant, which I'm not sure what that would entail. Jenny might be able to speak to that a little bit more. But the grant expires at the end of June next year, 2024. Other uses for the grant funding are, again, trail improvements, some fitness stations, some additional park furniture. A bicycle pump track was also on the list, which has not really been pursued. There hasn't been a push for it. But that was another item on the Prop 68 list that was on the original application, which we could then, start taking a look at if that's something that the community wants to see. And again, funds need to be fully utilized at $199,000 by June 30th, 2024, or the $99,000 plus the 40 matching. So we got to come up with that. And then there are some other needs that at the park that have come up recently that we would look to maybe the general fund monies that have been established for the for this project. In the current budget are mainly it's repairs to the park host home. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the park host recently moved out of the park host home, and there is some unfunded, unrealized issues with that park host home in order to make it livable again, and so that we can before we bring in another park host. We've scoped out some of them, but we're probably looking at $50,000 to $60,000 at the end of the day to make everything happen there. Again, it's still ongoing, the analysis of that. And then also, one item that fell off the CIP list was repairs to the skate park, the surface repairs. That's another item. It was, as I recall, it was around about $15,000 to $20,000. It's just crack sealing and just doing a resurface on the skate park, which is another unfunded item that certainly could be utilized out there. We can't utilize grant funds, but we could certainly utilize the general fund monies on. And we did spend some general fund monies last year on resurfacing all the parking areas and the roads throughout that area when we did our slurry seal project. And that concludes staff's presentation. And Jenny and I are available for any questions or comments.
Roger, would you mind putting that last slide back up, the black one with the white font? Because I'm a little confused by the numbers, so before we do comments, maybe just clarify.
Okay.
So because I think what you're saying is we have enough money to go with our most expensive option. I just want to know how much money we really do have to work with here.
Okay.
So if we have the 175 already approved in the CIP and 99,000 in grant funds remaining, that's $275 right there. That math is too perfect.
That was why we put that number in this, in
Okay.
the CIP, was we said it's going to be about 275,000 to deliver the pickleball courts. So that's how we put it in the
But
CIP.
you've identified one additional cost here, which is additional 50 to 60K to make the park host home livable again. And what is the local match required for the 40K? Is that already accounted for in the 99K, or do we have to also spend that?
Well, that's accounted for in the 176,000 that the city is contributing towards whatever. That was in the CIP. We need 40. You know what? Hey, we need 40 to match. You know what? We're going to do better than that. We're going to put 176,000 there. So we're matching with a heck of a lot more than what we needed.
Got it.
Questions?
A question. I am concerned with the third option that, there was money that was contributed to the city for a particular purpose, and then, you're changing the purpose of that resource. My question is, can the tennis courts be adapted for dual use? You can convert them to pickleball courts if you need them, but then revert them back to tennis courts when they're not in use for pickleball?
That is a possibility. We have looked into that option. That's another option. So I did download from the internet this afternoon a couple of different options. The colored one is an option where you can fit 2 pickleball courts on a tennis court, and I've roughly scaling what we have out there, that could work. So with 2 side-by-side courts, what we could fit 4 courts on there, and then they could be used side by side. So someone who's playing tennis, they can play tennis on it, and then it would take a little bit of work to roll out the temporary portable nets for pickleball, and that could be installed and mounted up, and we could use that for that. That might take some additional scheduling by the Recreation Parks Department as well. If there is a desire and a need to utilize 4 tennis courts and it's full occupancy, then maybe they play. There's 2 days a week, or on the weekends that's when they play, and then we make it available for pickleballers on a different day. But that would take some staff time to set things up, but that is certainly a possibility. And the one that's the schematic is kind of the layout of. That's virtually the exact dimensions that we have right now. We actually have about 110 by 120 is what we have out there right now. So we would fit about 6 pickleball courts if we did decide to go completely remove the tennis ball courts and use the existing post-tension slab for pickleball.
Thank you.
Did you cost out this model, Roger? Sorry. Is there a cost if we were to do both, right? Repurpose some of or dual purpose the tennis courts? What would it cost to add those decals and paint?
Roger, I have that price. You are looking at, let me find it. For tennis courts, about $6,200 to paint the lines. And then portable nets would be about $750 each. There are some portable nets that are much more expensive in like the $5,000 range. It just depends on, how much you want to spend.
Yeah.
Jenny, $6,200 for
4 courts.
all 4. Okay.
Please let Mr. Murphy make his comments. Because there's another suggestion.
A couple of things. So one of the things that precipitated this conversation with staff was when we realized what the cost was to repair the park host home, and the fact that we didn't have budgeted funds to do those repairs. And so we started talking about other options. It became clear that if we were going to go with the original plan, the tennis courts were going to be needed to
at least as a temporary option for pickleball to be able to continue to be played. I included in your blue folder are a couple of photographs that my former maintenance director sent to me. They just resurfaced their 2 tennis courts in Hidden Valley, and they have painted lines on the tennis courts using the existing tennis net. Now, the difference in height between pickleball and tennis is 2 inches at the center of the net. So the pickleball net is 34 inches, tennis net is 36 inches. I looked that up today. So what we did in Hidden Valley on my direction, because we did this in Orville when I was the Parks and Rec general manager there, was utilize the tennis court. So we could theoretically, this is not an option that was presented in the packet, but there are other options available. This basically restripe the tennis courts using the same net. You wouldn't need additional, the temporary net. You wouldn't destroy the purpose. I know there's some folks probably in the audience, and certainly at least one individual I spoke to earlier today, are concerned about not having tennis available to be played on the courts. And based on the money that was left by the Stern Family Trust, we would not be eliminating that. So that's certainly another option that could be explored. And a reason, literally, just was a conversation with my former maintenance director up in Hidden Valley. He sent me these photos this weekend. So it cost us, when I did it on the courts before they were resurfaced, about $500 to restripe, and for 2 courts, that was a total between $500 and $1,000.
Let's make one thing very clear. When you say restripe, you're not actually taking off the tennis court striping.
No,
you're
you're just adding a
in
line.
pickleball striping on top. So the same court can be used for tennis or pickleball, depending upon who's there, a reservation system, something of that nature. And it costs how much to paint
It was
that?
somewhere between $500 and $1,000. This is 3 or 4 years ago to do both courts.
Oh, okay. Inflation, it'll cost you $10,000.
So double that, yeah.
But Randy, in this example, your ratio is 1-to-1 as opposed to pickleball courts, tennis courts, as opposed to 2-to-1 in Roger's example, right?
Roger, but we were losing the ability to have the tennis played at the same time. Or
Well, literally at the same time.
interchange, well, not necessarily
Not
literally,
in the
but-
same hour, but you could repurpose and play tennis
right
after the pickleball's over.
I'd like to, would there be an opportunity here for a fourth option? Let's add to the confusion. What if you adopted the item or option 3? You'd have 2 tennis courts, 6 pickleball courts. Could you not build 2 more tennis courts where the existing pickleball courts are?
No.
There wouldn't be enough room for 2 tennis courts on that location, maybe 1 tennis court. But then, we would be looking at, again, a considerable expenditure, probably around $250,000 for the grading and drainage improvements and everything else, and removal of the existing slabs. But we do have, that's, about roughly $100,000 of grant funding, and then whatever the city would, so.
Well, the pricing is close to the same, but we would actually gain, because we would just have to redo 2 tennis courts into 6 pickleball courts, and then build 2 more tennis courts down below, if assuming there's room.
Yeah, there's not enough room for 2 tennis courts. There's barely enough room right now for 2 pickleball courts. And pickleball courts, there's about 4 pickleball courts for the
I like where you're going though, Dave. More. Let's get
and
more.
the fencing also is much taller for tennis courts. I hadn't considered a tennis court down there, but that would be. I mean, we can certainly take a look and cost it out and bring it back to council if you're interested in pursuing something like that.
What about, okay, can the current pickleball courts be resurfaced and be used?
Yes.
Jenny's going to come up and say,
So, to throw another option, you can do a sport court on top.
that mean?
So, a sport court are like interchangeable tiles that is made specifically for pickleball courts. I got a quote about $62,000 to resurface, or not resurface, but add those on top of what we currently have.
For both courts?
For both courts. And then like an aluminum edging would be placed, because you're lifting it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And so an aluminum edging would go around the courts, but this is specifically made, it has a 15-year warranty, so, not as long, but it's something that could help in the meantime.
So
Add another option.
62,000.
And add to that about what we had originally planned on, which is about 50 to 60,000 for the fencing,
Right.
other site improvements, grading, drainage, all that other stuff as well.
Okay.
So 110.
So we're at 100,000, and we keep 2 courts. And then if we converted or added the lines to a couple of the tennis courts, so we leave 2 tennis courts totally dedicated? Can we do that? And how many do we have?
4
We have
tennis
4
courts.
tennis courts.
Yeah.
We can do whatever you want.
Dedicated to tennis.
Sounds like it.
2 that were dual use, and the other 2 existing courts were put this tile stuff on it. We end up with a lot of capabilities, I think.
It's a lot of options.
If that's what council wants us to pursue, we can certainly take a look at that.
I like the idea of more pickleball. There was a lot of great comments about getting to where we could host tournaments. But we'd need, I don't remember the number of courts we would need to host a tournament. 6, 8, 12.
12?
Ooh.
Yeah, that's never going to happen.
Yeah. Shoot.
Are there any restrictions for the tennis court areas by virtue of the gift or grant that was given? Those, I assume those are restricted funds.
The funds that were given or bequeathed to the city that they'd be used for tennis repairs or maintenance to the tennis courts. There is some conversation, has been some conversation, that the intent was for only tennis to be played on those courts. That question has not been completely answered yet because we're still trying to find the original trust documents.
I have an email from the trustee.
Thank you. I'll get to you in a moment.
Okay.
Any other comments for staff report from the council? In that case, let's go to the audience. Go ahead, bring it up. Let's see what you've got.
That's me. That's me. Mayor Infante, city council members, I'm Tom Olmsted, and I am a tennis player. And I have played on those courts for 20 years with a group that has probably played much longer than I have. And it's a group that it's dwindling in number. Some of the players have died off. That's the only way to say it. But we go there every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Cold or hot weather, it doesn't make any difference, and we play tennis and enjoy the courts. Other courts at that time are in use, either 2 or 3 of the 4. So we have a great group, and we had a guy who was a tennis aficionado, Harry Stearns. He was a tennis player's tennis player. I mean, he loved the game. He was always there. And he said to us, when I leave, you guys are going to have some great courts to play on. And we finally discovered what Harry meant. Harry gave the gift of the city, according to my numbers, almost $300,000 for the purpose of building new tennis courts. And that's what he did.
When was that? When was that?
This is probably, the city will know.
2020?
2020?
Okay.
Okay. So I don't know if you got the email today from the trustee, Mark Owens?
We did.
Okay. So I think it's pretty clear that the money was dedicated to the tennis courts for tennis players throughout the area. And I have to tell you, they are fine courts. And the players who play tennis there, the group, supports leaving the tennis courts alone. They should be left as tennis courts. They should be left as Harry envisioned them, because he was a real promoter for tennis, and he put his money where his mouth is. So we would like to see the tennis courts stay as they are. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have Mr. Brad McVeigh. Oh. He's already put in his paperwork, so he'll come up first, please. Or just, we'll get to you. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members, for giving me time to speak to you tonight. My name is Brad McVeigh, and I'm a frequent user of the HCA recreational opportunities. I represent a number of people who are interested in the development of the HCA pickleball courts. I'm a tennis player for over 45 years, and most recently, a pickleball player. My wife and I were looking for an activity that we could do together, meet other people in the area, and have some fun. Pickleball became the answer. Last Wednesday, I learned of the option city staff was recommending to repair or improve the current 2 pickleball courts at HCA, currently the only public courts in the valley. These courts are heavily used in the mornings, evenings, and weekends. Just this morning, 19 people were present to play. With only availability of 2 courts, which contain 8 people if you're playing doubles, that left over 10 people left standing around waiting to play. This already exceeds a 3-court option as demonstrated earlier. I posted a poll at the courts last Thursday with your staff's recommended suggestions to see what the current players would like to see in court repair or improvements. In review, since Thursday, 54 people replied in person or on the polling list at the courts. With the options provided in your staff report response, which I will forward to your staff unless you have other directions, was this. Option 1, 0 votes. Option 2, 9 votes. Option 3, 23 votes. Options 2 or 3, 12 votes. Additionally, 10 people had no opinion, which included 6 out-of-town visitors who did not want to influence any decisions, and 1 person listed option 4, which I don't understand. With any choices in groups of people, almost never is anyone in total agreement. You likely know this better than any of us in your position. There is, however, some element of these plans that every player agrees on. There's a need for more courts. There needs to be space for waiting players not to stand in the dirt in the mud. The east-west facing court needs to be eliminated. This sun angle prevents decent play. Outdoor sport courts in this part of the hemisphere should be north-south facing. Any option needs to have designated, painted, and outlined courts that do not have multi-use court lines interspersed with fencing to reduce errant balls from other courts interfering with the play. I've now done my best to relay the opinions of the majority of the interested players. I'll give you my 2 cents worth. I suggest taking 1 tennis court, converting it to 4 permanent pickleball courts. It'll be cramped but workable. This will have a reduced impact on the tennis community, which understandably would not like to lose access to courts. In addition, do minimally required repair requests as existing pickleball courts so they can be used for city-approved clinics, lessons, people wanting to do drills, and new players exploring the game.
Thank you.
I'll end there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now you can come up, sir. Please introduce yourself.
Fascinating going through this process. Number one, I've been here since 1961. I was a science teacher at the high school, tennis coach, football coach for 54 years. The same problem came up because at that time, the tennis courts at the high school were not very good in cracking, and found out that cost a lot of money, as you're all hearing. It took me 10 years to raise all the amount of money we needed to do it right. But before that, because 3 of them were asphalt, we were putting out money that was wasted over and over and over again, plus not the quality of play. The second thing that I want to point out, that the courts at Han Christian got so bad, it looked like there was an earthquake on the courts, and us old guys were tripping on the cracks. That is not okay. By the way, already the old guys here, stand up, you guys can play.
The old guy.
I want to tell you, it is special. And the truth is, pickleball and tennis together do not work well. It's much noisier. The ball's rolling on the court if they're side by side, as been suggested. The other thing you do, if you haven't been to the middle school tennis matches in the past 10 years, it's gotten nothing but better and better. You cheat all the kids at that age group from having half-decent courts to play on. There are a number of pros that come and teach kids every week. And the fact is, I even made sure for the high school courts even, because there was a demand, that they had to leave 2 gates open so that people would have access. What I'm going to point out to you, when you make this decision, you do want quality pickleball courts. There's a lot of land in the valley. Particularly, there's even extra land at the park. Pickleball courts are smaller. I also say, if you're going to do it right the first time, because then you end up with an expense every other year to repair or not have quality. The truth is, you need both. To get both, it's expensive.
Yes, it is.
To get both, it's expensive. But to cheat the kids of the valley of be able to have a tournament and play middle school matches at the park, all those kids all over the valley are going to get hurt.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate your comments. Anybody else in the audience? Yes, sir.
Peter Reich here once more. So I, like many others, have become a new pickleball player. I've had kids in high school tennis, and so also avid supporter of the tennis program. When the pickleball courts started falling apart, and I would encourage all of you to do this personally, I sent a Freedom of Information request in because I said, what did the city do here? How could they make these courts so badly? And I was given the costs, which, by the way, are not quite, but on the order of magnitude less than we're being talked about today. And so I either someone really did it horribly cheap, or we're spending a lot more in these estimates than we should. But I would encourage, you're on the city council, you don't have to do Freedom of Information. Look at what we spent the first time those courts went in. And it obviously wasn't done right. To Walt's point, if you're going to do it right. Let's do it correctly this time. And I would encourage even maybe a little bit of a metered response. I don't know how many of you have been out to the pickleball courts or the tennis courts. There are some observations, and I like those courts, and I'd like to see more pickleball courts. But the observation I have is sometimes the pickleball courts are packed. Sometimes the 4 tennis courts have people playing. But often that's not the case. Often the pickleball courts are packed and there's no one on, or just a couple on the tennis courts. And so if there were a way to have them some multi-use, that might be sensible. I also question, I've looked at the lines and the spacing. I really question the suggested layout if it's really realistic. And I'm very, we need people, when they say the line spacing, we can fit them in. Does it really work? Because some of those line spacings that I was looking at, to me, the setbacks, the spacing is not workable. And so I would encourage, the valley's small, the park is close, go out one morning, watch people play. see what the spaces are. Could you do it that way? The other thing in the Valley, a lot of people go down to Hanada. They have the gym, multi-use, there's volleyball lines, there's basketball lines. There are 3 pickleball court lines in that gym. And people, that's packed twice a week. And so it's very, very popular. There are potentially ways to multi-use some space. I don't want to detract from the perfection of the good tennis we have, but budgets. But let's, when we do it this time, let's actually do it right. I would, when I say do it right, I'm not sure where we're getting our counsel from. Obviously, we don't have a good track record. Someone got counsel on how to do these last time. We have an opportunity to do it a second time, all that money thrown away from the first time. But please, the Valley's small. Just go out, nice morning, 9 o'clock, go out, take a walk, Hans Christian, see how it's being used. In any case, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name's Rick Bernhard. I have sagebrush painting here in the Valley. I've been painting pickleball lines more and more on private residences. I did the lines at the gym. I'm bidding a 3-court process for the city of Buellton right now. Yes, I enjoy pickleball. It is adults that play. But I think one thing that we haven't talked about that is really important, because we spent a lot of time talking about how are we doing with our heads and beds, because that's our income, right? And I can't go to HCA or Buellton Rec without meeting a new person who said, we planned our trip, and the first thing we did was we called the city and we said, where are the pickleball courts? It's a factor that determines what people do for recreation or their trips away these days. It's just that addiction that the pickleball comes with me. We don't stop playing pickleball because we're traveling. We're going to travel where we can play pickleball. And yes, the courts need to be done right the first time. I donated a lot of my time and energy and money and my guys trying to fix the courts that were poured. 4 slabs, uneven, and all that stuff that was in those joints, that's what I put in there to try to save those. And it didn't last. You've got to do it right. I'm just winging this, by the way. I didn't come to make a speech. I just came to support the situation. Don't mean to compete with tennis by any means, but the 2 sports need to live side by side somehow, where we can figure that out. But the more courts you have that are good courts, because people, like tennis players, they know a good court from a bad court, so do the pickleball people. And the best, to me, it seems to me right now, if you can take 2 of those tennis courts and put 4 at the most. I'm not going to get into the size, you need your slab, but it's more than the size of the court. I've probably used up my 3 minutes of fame already, but I'll stop with that.
Thank you very much for your comments, sir. Do you want to speak? Yes, sir. Yeah, it's okay.
No. My name's Darren Fichter. I was born in Santa Barbara, but raised in Solvang, of all places, and went to San Ynez High School, and very fortunate to learn tennis on Hans Christian Andersen courts. And it became such a big part of my life. I became not call myself a semi-pro, whatever, but I ended up teaching at Picara and UCSB and private lessons since '96 and all this good stuff, and fell in love with the sport and teaching people the athleticism of what tennis really is. Pickleball, it's so great to see all these people. I do see all these people every day. We're there 3 to 5 days a week. I'm not necessarily in the clinics. I don't teach down there, but I see everybody. I see the old guys. There's a bunch of guys, 20 guys that are not here right now as well, but I'm kind of representing as well, including Judge Foley as well. But the point is that I don't think that the tennis community should suffer because pickleball needs more courts. I just don't. And I know there's a lot of people that agree with me here and not here. Tennis courts were brought to us by Harry Stearns, and I think it's pretty clear that he wants to leave it to tennis only. I think pickleball is a fast-growing sport. That's great. That's not the tennis players' problem, and I don't think it should be the city's problem, of Solvang here, and Hans Christian Andersen's problem. I think they're lucky that they got what they got with the pickleball courts they have. Just because it's the fastest-growing sport, I don't think you should give them anything more, other than maybe making a new facility. If they want a new facility, have people donate some money. Or the city can go donate something else and make some more room for them. That's fine. But leave the tennis courts alone, please. I do appreciate you all.
Thank you very much. Anybody else in the audience? Okay. Yes, sir.
We're kind of missing the fact that
Please tell us your name.
Mike Scavone.
Okay.
I've been playing tennis on our courts over there since I've been here 6 years. We're forgetting the fact that our tennis player financed those courts, and they're ours. And I feel bad for them, the pickleball people. They should have a place to do that, but not ours.
Thank you, sir. Okay. I believe we've got somebody on Zoom that would like to, I'm sorry, we have one more here. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Sierra Falso. That's my husband, Darren. He started teaching me tennis about 5 years ago. As a new tennis player, what I've experienced at playing at Hans Christian Andersen when the pickleball is going on, I really want the pickleball players to have a spot. I really do believe it should be separated. It's very distracting as a new player to hear the bang, 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 and it ruins the flow of tennis elegance. And that's all I really have to say. But I do think that the pickleball players should have more courts. I just think try to figure out a different layout so that they can have more space.
Thank you very much. Yes, we got two? No? Oh, did we?
I'm Nelson Owens, and I've been playing tennis out there for 40 years. And we have nothing against pickleball. We think it's a great game, and we think it should be expanded. But what we don't think is it should be touching the tennis courts. Now, there's only 4 tennis courts, the ones right there in the whole valley. So it's a big valley for the 4 courts. But and also the cost of the tennis courts have been recently done, as you know. So it's in good shape. So, and the pickleball courts are half the size of the tennis courts. There ought to be some places in this valley where we can put a lot more pickleball courts and leave the tennis courts alone. That's what I think.
Thank you very much. I got a Michael, is it Michael Rappaport? Lori?
Should we open the mic?
Okay, we've got some people we don't know.
Yeah, my name is Mark Owens, and I am the trustee of the Harry and Lorette Stearns Family Trust. And I just want to reiterate that their funds were definitely designated for tennis. That was their intention. That was Harry's life. That and several of the people that you heard speak tonight very eloquently really tell their story. I think the pickleballers lack history. These courts I played on as a San Ynez Valley High School tennis player. Lori Popkin in the room back in 1978-79 is a long-term arrangement. We're not talking about a large facility. We're talking about 4 courts. And a speaker or two ago that talked about difficulty playing next to pickleball. Pickleball and tennis are not compatible. I'm supportive of the sport, but it's a different sport. It's very noisy. It just doesn't have the same level of concentration in that regard. And so I really feel, and I'm sure that I'm speaking for Harry and Lorette, that those 4 courts are not that much to ask for the community.
Who do we have next? This is bombing again? Wait just a second, please.
Shut it down.
Okay. Okay. Do we want to try and then just be ready to shut them down or just knock them out? Just a second, please.
They're not going to show their video. I'm just going to kick them out.
Okay. We have the Zoom bombing thing that we talked about before. It's happening right now. So please bear with us for a second while we try and see if we can resolve this.
Man, I wish I had that much free time.
Yeah, I know. That's true. That's because that's what it was supposed to be on, wasn't it? Okay, let us go back to this issue. I'm sorry, did someone in the back wanted to, the gentleman up front wanted to talk, and a lady, come on, ladies first. We'll get back to you.
My name is Janice Gardner, and I'm a pickleball player and a tennis player sometimes. And I just keep on hearing, it seems like the tennis players think that we want to take away the tennis courts. That is not our intention. We just want to play pickleball. It is growing by leaps and bounds in the valley. I started playing in around 2017, and you could always play. We had a small group. There was no problem. But now there's lots of people that want to play, and there's a lot of people from out of town that come that wish to play, and some are beginners and different whatever. It makes it very hard when there's only 2 courts. So we don't want to steal the tennis players' courts. We just want courts that we can play on. And we certainly do need more than 2 courts. And we do need courts that are functioning and perhaps some shade. And definitely not just metal poles with orange plastic things that are kind of dangerous looking. You know, we make sure not to overdo it and do our limits so nobody gets hurt. And I do encourage you to go look at the courts and see what shape they're in. And I love tennis. I love Popkins. And my kids grew up here, but to say that we have no right for tennis courts or you shouldn't care about us because tennis is great too, that makes no sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you want to make a comment at this point? Well, please come to the podium.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
We need your name, and we need to be able to put you on the recording.
Sorry, yes, it's Darren Victor again. I just forgot one of the most important things is that if you do go out there like these guys do, we can prove that there are 3 out of the 4 courts taken almost every day, not including the tennis clinic on Saturdays. They're used pretty much throughout all the day. So it's not like these courts are just sitting there. There are always at least 3 to 4 being used by tennis players. And I don't mind if pickleball players do come up to that 4th court next to me. Happens all the time, and that's fine. As long as there's no tennis players waiting, which I haven't seen, so that's good. So we're open to everything except pickleball on our tennis courts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Joan Reedon. I live in Solvang. I am a pickleball player. I used to play tennis. Both my kids played with Mr. Popkin, and I love tennis and love Mr. Popkin. we need new courts. We need more courts. My idea is that you have take one tennis court and make it multi-use with maybe a movable net, and then redo the pickleball courts down below completely, adding a third one, so then we would have like however many we could fit. How many we fit on a tennis court? Two, and then 3, so that would make it 5. And if it's multi-use on the tennis court, then people can play pickleball and tennis, and we would have new ones down below. So that's kind of my vote for an option.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay. I'm not sure that any of those are legitimate. Done out? Okay. We are, to use my word, killing them off. A little too suggestive, I suppose. All right, let's bring it back to the City Council for comments and direction to the staff. Comments?
I had a quick question of staff. Is there any opportunity or space at the Sunny Fields Park for pickleball? Has that been considered?
I would have to take a look at that, because I know that there's softball fields there, and there's volleyball courts. Not a whole lot of parking. We've had some parking issues in the outfield for, just recently, for people using the volleyball courts. We certainly could look at that. We wouldn't be able to utilize the Prop 68 funds at Sunny Fields. So that would be an issue. It's, that was, the grant was applied for Hans Christian Andersen Park, and that's the only place that we can utilize utilize those grant funds for. If you recall, about two and a half months ago, we did we brought forward a deed restriction on Hans Christian Andersen, and that was essentially for the Prop 68. And we wouldn't be able to utilize those funds anywhere else in any other park.
Would it be an adverse to have facilities at both? Say you only did three courts on one and finished the other 3 at the other park?
I don't see any reason why that would be adverse. It would. Yeah.
We could use those grant funds for that, though.
Yeah, I mean, there's other areas, there's other semi-flat areas at Hans Christian Andersen that we could utilize for pickleball courts as well. It's not an option that we've pursued, but we can certainly look into it if that is council direction. There's a large grassy area that's over by the playgrounds and Area D that could potentially be utilized, but we'd have to take a look at it, study it a little bit, and that would be something that we could take a look at. Maybe take a look at extending the grant as well, so that we can actually do this right. But that's an option, certainly an option we can consider.
Any other comments? Okay. My comments come down to, we've been listening to a lot of both sides. Some excellent comments on both. What everybody seems to forget is we have to pay for these. And so everybody's saying, well, just build 20 of these and 10 of those and everything will be fine. Sure. You want to fund it for us? I would be more than happy to. Our issue right now is, it turns out that if what I heard from Roger and Jenny was correct, we need $275,000 if we want to build the 2 new pickleball courts.
3.
Okay. All right. So
It's potential, though. We aren't there. That's a
and
preliminary
3 to 6
design.
months construction when we'd have to use the tennis courts if we're going to allow the pickleball players to do anything.
That is correct.
And so that becomes a major issue to consider. What I heard from Jenny was that we could, for something in the neighborhood of $60,000, make those courts usable, realistically usable, with that overlay that you're talking about. And how long would the construction take?
It's a pretty quick installation, but you're looking at just a 15-year warranty. So, it's not a real long span. Just to keep in
Well, I
mind.
understand, but for 50,000, we can have 2 courts?
About 62,000.
62,000. See, I keep going to the low side.
Also, Mr. Mayor, you do have to add in the 50 to 60,000 that would be necessary for the grading improvements and the fencing
Right.
and the other work that is necessary out there to begin with.
So it'd be 120,000.
About 120,000, yeah. And that construction for the grading improvements, a couple months.
So we're still at a couple months, even with
Yeah, I mean,
120,000.
just being honest about it.
Yeah,
Is
no, that's fine.
a couple months on the really short end, probably longer. It's just the way things go.
Especially this time of year.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it starts to rain or something.
Well, can I ask a question? I didn't want to interrupt
No,
where you were going, but the pickleball court painter, can't we, I thought I read something about temporary, there's a way to put temporary lines down. I'm not sure if they can be removed later, but does that enable pickleball while we're doing what we're doing in the existing location?
That is one of the things that we're looking into,
Okay.
regardless of any option.
If we did that, do we have a costing on what it would be to
I-
temporarily use one of the tennis courts or two, possibly? Temporary.
This is not public discussion at this
Oh,
point. Sit back
okay, I
down.
guess he's
Thank you
going
very
to
much.
help out with this exact point.
We'll be more than happy to talk to you at the time we make a decision. Thank you, sir. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Did we have a cost for that?
I do not have a cost for that. I don't know if Jenny has cost of that, I don't know.
No.
You could put tape down. I mean, that's not going to last very long. The other option is just to paint and then repaint.
Okay.
So the paint was a few $1,000s for the temporary lines, or for the new lines, and then repainting would be probably on the order of about the same.
At this point in time, this is going to be tough for you. What would you recommend? Yeah, I know.
Well, it's this from a public works perspective and a construction perspective, we do need to utilize the if we're going to do anything with the two courts that are in existence, we're going to have to utilize the tennis courts for a temporary basis to begin with. What I would recommend is not really my decision to make, to be honest with you.
I'm trying to pass the bucket. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah,
working.
I get it. And from a city engineer perspective, we can make anything work. It's just a matter of utilizing the resources that we have to make it work best. It's a lot of resources, very expensive to make 2, potentially 3 viable courts. When we have perfectly good tennis courts that are there that could be utilized for a dual purpose. Now, is that, are we going to make everybody happy? We're not going to make anybody happy regardless of what we do here. And 2 to 3 courts are not going to meet the current demand for pickleball at this time.
And we need 75,000 to fix the host home and the skate park anyway.
About that, yeah.
Looking at the total amount of budget that is available at this point in time, the 275, 300,000, we keep running into this same issue of cost.
Well, can I ask a question? What about our Measure U money? Is there any reason that we're prohibited from using that for any of these projects, including the skate park, the repairs to the park host home?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
We've avoided spending any of the money to give the committee a chance to tell us or make a recommendation on how to spend it, but certainly there's no
But that
restriction in that
potentially
regard.
could mean where that money's out of reach for a year, possibly. We won't have a committee in place until January, best case, right?
Right.
Mr. Attorney, I know we're going to assign a committee. Do we have to wait for them before we can use any of that Measure U money?
It's an advisory committee. They're just providing you advice on how it should be used to make sure that it's consistent with the will of the voters. But you ultimately have the authority to expend the monies from Measure U.
So that would give us an option.
I
Do-
can't say that
I
I'm.
just have one more thing, because I'm not sure if we're just worn out or we're worried. I'm going to put an opinion out there and see how people respond to it. I think of these things as a supply and demand. And there's a heck of a lot of demand for pickleball, and we already committed to repairing the courts and enabling the sport and the growth of the sport and answering that demand. I think we also have a unique circumstance that we should not ignore. The will of a certain individual who granted his ending wish was to make sure that tennis was preserved. So we can't ignore that. So I would ask a question. I'm not going to prolong or protract the decision. It would be good to know how much demand there really is and how much actual use is of those tennis courts, because you want to preserve the sport and the intent of I think it was Harry Stern's will. I hope I get his name correct, of his will. But, having multi-use for one or two of those courts would help us answer demand and acknowledge a very real need for additional recreation with limited money that we have. So I'll leave it there. I would go for I would actually like to spend as much money as we could and fix get 3 courts and fix it and do it great and do it right and create energy around the sport and have additional space for pickleball while we're preserving tennis. So I'd say let's temporarily test those multi-purpose on the tennis courts and see if we can see how that goes. If that's not an option and we can't do temporary, let's commit 1 court and see if that coexistence goes well.
If we're going to be playing with the tennis courts, then we need to give that certain individual whose name is Harry Stearns back his money. Because that money was, I love pickleball, but that money was earmarked. So if you guys want to tinker with playing with the tennis courts, then give his estate back $300,000. We seem to have money to burn, so why not?
Mr. Murphy or Mr.
Well, I was just going to point out that the bequest was expended for the purposes that it was granted for.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that Mr. Stern controls city property in perpetuity. If the city 50 years from now decides that it wants to demolish the tennis courts because they're too much of a maintenance obligation at that point, the fact that Mr. Stern granted some money to the city at one point doesn't change the city's discretion to do that unless the city agreed in a document with Mr. Stern to maintain them in perpetuity. The city has the flexibility to manage its own property, and while obviously the city greatly appreciates the donation that Mr. Stern did and will try to comply as best as it can with the intent of that grant, it is not a binding obligation for the city to maintain them as tennis courts forever.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
I was going to point that out as well, but I figured it was better coming from the legal deal. We have had conversation. I did have conversation, and Mr. Fleischman was in the room when we had it earlier with the trustee. And when I asked him if there was any document that obligated the city to leave it as a tennis-only facility, he was not able to provide that information. I did ask for a copy of the trust, or at least the relevant portions of it. We are still looking at that, but we do not have that information in hand at the moment. So perhaps this is something that needs to wait for a permanent decision, if that's an issue with the council.
Last comments? Or suggestions?
Just a question. Well, we fixed the pickleball courts, we're still going to need to repurpose the tennis courts if we want to allow pickleball players to use the Hans Christian Andersen facilities?
That is correct.
What would it take? Sorry? Coexist, yeah. Well, you had mentioned the fact that you could put some kind of a slurry seal or something on top of the existing courts, and that wouldn't be any good for it more than a year, but it would last for a while we consider this, and it would give the pickleball people a better place to play for now?
It would be a resurfacing of the court, like, the surface that is on there now. It's a hard, basically it's a hard candy shell over a,
Gotcha.
over a.
How much would it cost and how long would it take?
I'm not certain because I haven't costed it out, but it does, I haven't separated out that cost. What I would, the cost that I have received is in order to overlay with the post-tension slab with the 2 inches of sand, and then with all the surfacing, and then new nets and everything else, out the door was $175. And that's without the fencing and all the other stuff.
Another 50,000.
Yeah, so there's another 50,000. That's how I came up with the 225.
We keep coming up against this number we have here, and we need more money is what it
So
boils down to.
I've thrown the number out, just common sense tells me it's probably somewhere in the $15,000 range would be the resurfacing of the courts, and which would last about a year. And then that's, again, as the tennis coach, I can't remember his name, but the longtime tennis coach did say that was good money spent after bad.
After bad.
And it's money you're not getting back.
We have, we still have to do the fencing though anyway, don't we? And how much of this grant money could we even use for things like that?
Currently, what the proposal is for whatever we do for the 2 existing courts was we were going to utilize the remainder of the grant funds for that. If we choose not to do anything there, then we would repurpose the grant funds for another use. I would caution against using the grant funds for any sort of temporary thing on the tennis courts because of the deed restriction that we signed. Whatever we do with the grant funds does have to remain in perpetuity for about 25 years, and we did sign something that did say that we got to make sure that whatever we do with the grant fund stays there as a park device, or as a park improvement.
And that grant fund was how much?
We have about $99,000 left in the grant.
And we only need about 50,000 or so to get the fencing and everything done.
Yeah.
So that's half of it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look at options with the money we have.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not seeing a great solution, to be honest with you.
I'd like to
Please.
propose that city, basically with the grading and everything else required of the existing site,
Mhm.
consider a different site that's easier to grade or what have you at either Hans Christian Andersen or Sunny Fields. Leave the existing pickleball courts as they are until such time as we have a plan for the rebuilding, and let them be utilized as they are, because that's going to be temporary. But that way there's basically no change. The whole objective here is to find a suitable court site, multiple courts for pickleball. Tennis seems to be adequate, and I think if we had less grading, a flatter place, we wouldn't have the same cost that we're incurring.
That's a great point.
Yeah, we could, again, there's the flatter area that's over, by, just on the other side of the creek from Area D, which has the playground. There's a grassy area, which is enjoyed by a lot of people for a grassy picnic type area.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of grassy areas in Hans Christian Andersen Park. And
Well, I was
Better
thinking
save
it'd
us
make
some
the
water.
tennis people happy if they didn't have to listen to the pickleball people.
Yeah,
Move that
but
around.
Roger, we have to, there's more work to be done to confirm we can
Yeah.
actually get 3 courts if we choose the second option, right? So
That is correct.
Wow.
We're looking at about $30,000 to get a survey out there and to start working on design to really figure out what we can fit to shoehorn in that, whether we get a third court or
So
not.
can we expand the scope of the survey and see let's not abandon that particular location, but see if there's additional locations that we can assess.
Certainly.
Because we don't actually technically know that we will get 3 courts.
We do not. And also with the 3 courts, I'm very hesitant to say we're going to come in at or under 275. Once we start really pushing dirt around, we're shoehorning this thing into an area where there's a pretty significant slope, and we're looking at redirecting a road, and there's potentially utilities and some other things. We could be looking at a bit more than that.
Well, we're doing that because of the demand, right?
Exactly. Yep.
We're trying to answer the demand.
And we're trying to answer demand, and we're trying to get them oriented the right way, the north-south orientation, which is what has been requested repeatedly.
So and I think we can all get behind that. We are going to spend significant dollars one way or the other. We're looking at 250,000, or let's call it 300,000.
Yeah.
Then let's get a little more data to make sure we get the maximum number of courts in any location, right? That we can fit them in, and then tell us what those costs would be. And then by that time, maybe we know exactly what the cost would be for the park host home repair.
Okay, so what I think I'm hearing, and to bring this to a conclusion, is the council would like to have some additional information. So are we authorizing a contract for that, please? Can we do that? You said about $30,000.
I do have a quote from an engineering firm that is in our on-call engineering firm, Cannon, for just over $30,000 to do a survey and a rudimentary plan for that location. If I add an additional location to the survey, well, that's just they're mobilizing their surveyor. They can shoot some more shots. It's probably not going to be that much more to at least get a survey and a topo of that area.
Okay.
And that's within the city manager's authority. If that's the direction you want to go, you give the city manager
He's
direction.
signature authority at that level, so that's not a problem. You don't even have to bring it to us, just. So I'm going to ask the council, does everybody agree that we'd like to direct them to do the analysis to see what we can come up with in a more accurate cost?
Yes.
Yes? In various locations, too, yes. Okay. I think you have your orders. Thank you.
Away we go.
At this point, we are at the AB 1234 reports. Does anybody have a 1234 report?
No.
Thank you.
That's it.
We're not adjourned yet.
Holy moly. All right.
Kind of.
As of, you want to say something? I am closing the city council meeting as of, what is that, 9:52?
Record.